Okay.
Atira e horo e hori ki te atua e mangaro ki runga ki masu ki whenu e whakaare pai ki ngā tāma. I mua te timatanga te whakaare tanga o tō tātou kai ki te mea. I hi ana te tuku te whangahi ati ki tō tātou rangatira. A hiu hauka uia o maro tura te te wangi makanga. Takatako mai nā te rangatira i runga te mate o te e pāngi a tia nei i runga ki ai. Ka te rangatira, ai, i atura koe ki tō tukuna, tō iu, ki tō urupa. Ka te rangatira, ai atura. Kore la te koe mātou e hoa e tō ia mātou e mai katoa. O koe anō ki e whakakala ia mātou e whai korori ai koe mātou e mahi e mea tīmata, e mea mahi, e mea whakao tike o ti a koe. Kia whiwhi ai ki mātou i tōna tonu i te mea i atu paitia nei e koe. Koe i kurai ti tō mātou kai kaura. Te atua kārau ko te nei te kononga. E tō moku nei ke mui a koe te mea kai. Kua tura ngā whakamoimiti ngā whakawhekai. Māu ngā manātanga katoa e uhi e nei ki mui a mātou. I ngā atu nei kia koe kia toro te tari ngā te pai tari ngā manātu. A ki runga ni te whānau e pani nei e tani nei. I te neira. Rātau anō ki te whānau o Workau. E tani nei mo te nei mo tōna rangatira. E rā anō hoki te whānau a hāmi ora e takoto tira hamai. E rungu te marae o ruku muanda tēnei ato. Rātau anō ki ngā whānau e pani nei e tani nei. O te noa i te mutu. Te ato ka haro ka inga tēnei kia koe kia pāngai kia nei o e nā te pai. Ore ngā marātu ki rungu kia rāta. E mi anō kia koe te atu kia noa tahi nei ke wai ki mātou te nira. Kia māma haere tō tātou ni kaupapa. Kia te tuki pai ai te hihi o te pai haere tēnei rati. Rere te ato ka tēnei. E kia koe, i rote te whakapangu, ko koe te kinu ngā kioni kia iwi nui ngā riki. Te kai hango te rangi te whenua e hongu te karo, i kia koe. Āwiti.
Very much people that were chatting who are able to care. So thank you, and thank you for acknowledging for me who was passing over the weekend. 15 years is a very long time, and not just in this space, but in this space and others as well. So thank you for that acknowledgement. I think we're still waiting on Kevin to join our hui, but we do have a quorum today. So thank you in advance for everyone for the lots of reading that you would have done over the last week or so, and also to the staff members in terms of preparing the reports for us to consider. So thank you. Do we have any apologies? I think it's just James today. Yeah. And I guess Kevin for lateness. Can I please do I need to move those? Yeah. Yeah, I'll move those. We've got the Adrian moving in fire shower and secondary. Any additional items? Except for the one that would have come through over the weekend. Declarations of interest. And the next one is confirmation of minutes from our last hui. Any adjustments to those minutes? Did you read them?
Yes, but you know, I didn't see anything untoward in there, so I will move.
So we've got Councillor Bruce moving.
I'll second.
And Fire Joe.
My memory is not that good.
Super straightforward.
Excellent. Fine. So I will remember to do that. All those in favour again. Yes, so that was one of my notes for the survey, to remember those administrative matters. So we'll move on to 7.4, which is the chair's update. Sorry, 7.1, which is taken as read, but the report has two areas of focus. It's the takeaway points from attending a forum featuring Aotearoa's Chief Ombudsman, including a report that should drop tomorrow on Lagoima. So that will be interesting, and what that will hopefully talk about is when it's appropriate to go into public excluded, and also appropriateness of workshops as well, and how that space works. And then also the second part, or second focus, was in relation to the continued change impacting local government based on the recent general elections. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any queries. And welcome, Kevin.
That was
What
another
about-
online. That was another online thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so every so often the Office of the Auditor General host online forums for risk and insurance years around New Zealand. And it's an opportunity to consider topics that are flavors of the particular time of year. So the next one will be on climate risk, I think. So I'm looking forward to that one too. So it's really helpful because it means that I don't necessarily need to go and find context in terms of an update in that year's report.
Please, you are.
That's excellent. That's great you're doing it. Yeah, and I think it's just to add on, I think it's great, you know, like it's timely, and those with having those things in it, it is very pertinent for now. So helps to attention on things and where we're at. So I'm happy to move. So Gary.
Oh, just one quick comment. I'm looking forward to seeing what this partnership agreement specifically. I don't even understand what it is. So exciting. Maybe.
We've got Mayor Adrian moving. Do we have a seconder?
Oh, second.
And the fire Joanne seconding. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Cool, Mother. Kia ora. Item 7.2 on the agenda, which is insurance changes. So kia ora, Roger and Maya. Happy Tuesday to you both after a long weekend. You're in the hot seat. So if we could have a brief summary of the main points of the report for the committee's consideration, that would be fantastic.
So there's two aspects to this particular report. One is for advice. Matamata-Piako is one of the 10 councils within the Waikato who work for effectively COLAB, the Waikato LAS procuring insurances. Was very cost effective from year one ongoing. The policy with respect to infrastructure, the central government guarantees to pay 60% of any payout through a major event, with the council insuring 40%. For quite a period, there was a thinking amongst the Waikato LAS that they did not have confidence in central government honouring that, certainly for low claims. Previous events that have happened over recent years has indicated the government have come to the party, if you like. The additional premium we're paying for our top up to cover, we reinsure that 60% or part of that. The costs of the premiums have gone up so much at the Waikato LAS. We had a discussion between the whole group, and we feel at this stage it's not worth pursuing that. There's minimal risk to an individual district council, so that all councils that are still in that scheme agree that we should come out of it. So that's more information. If there's any questions on that, I can take that, but that's what the decision's been made at this stage.
Okay. Any questions on that?
That's the last one.
I think we're going to ask the same thing.
I would, Adrian, I had with the check yesterday. Material damage. Can you tell me just tell me what material damage?
Yes, so it's the second part of this paper, which we're looking for some sort of direction on. I just want to add a rider is that last week I got this current year's proposed premiums. I've had to try and digest them over the last couple of days. Still need to do some work on it, but I will be referring to that if that's okay with the chair. You won't have those details in front of you. I apologise for that, but being a long weekend of mowing grass, I was trying to do it between the two. Material damage, basically building insurance. So it's a physical, it's like this building.
So if this building fell down,
Yes,
all right, that's material damage.
material damage.
Right.
The previous item I wrote is infrastructure, so ground drainage and that sort of thing. The infrastructure is below, services below ground. That is underwritten by the government, the central government. Yeah, right. And councils insure 40% of the cost of redoing that. Central government insures 60% of that. And historically, there's been some concerns. I mean, some councils say, would the government have honoured that? Certainly the low claim.
I wasn't making the differentiation.
Yeah.
Yes, righto. Okay, let's wait when you talk about the material.
So last year, with all our policies, we were paying something like, I think, 850, 900,000 in premiums across 10 policies. I was asked to look at this as a way of reducing the premium. By far, the biggest premium is on material damage, which is buildings insurance. So we're 500 or 450,000, which is about 55–60% of our premiums. So I went through this spreadsheet with all our properties. But well, if we don't insure buildings up to, say, $1 million, what would that saving be on premiums? And I calculated on a pro rata, which is rough and ready. It would reduce the premium by about $120,000. It comes out, but there's a slightly discounted amount on that. So unless we actually went through with the proposal, I couldn't give an exact figure. On Thursday evening last week, I heard that the premiums for material damage based on like for like was going up from 457,000, I think it is, to 602,000. That proposal from 1 November. So even allowing for discounting, it only brings it back to what we were actually paying last year. So it's still a significant amount. If we don't insure buildings at all, $100 million, that does expose to a risk. Is that an acceptable risk? I've gone back and done some more number crunching. Over the last 10 years, they've also increased the discount, the excess or deductible, however you call it, from 10,000 to 25,000. So that means every claim we make, or each claim we make on an event, we would have to find 25,000 out of our operating costs for that year. Now, over the last 10 years, I've gone back. There's actually only been 2 incidences where we have claimed more than 25,000. One was recent, 25 Whitehouse Road, where the roof came off in a storm, and the other was the fire at Harris Park in the Pavilion, which was probably about 10 years ago. So I think what we need to consider is the balance of that against not insuring. In other words, spread over, say, 10 years, what would we have paid out in premiums as opposed to effectively a quasi-semi-insurance?
Okay, thank you, Roger. We'll go to questions because I think we'll land on an answer based on questions. Yeah.
And I guess looking at the schedule here, a lot of these buildings are community facilities that have been built by the community.
Correct.
On council land. And yeah, I guess it's a lot of these things like community halls, they aren't insured for replacement value anyway, because there's no council wouldn't rebuild them. So there's those sorts of elements that fit in with this anyway, isn't there? So yeah, you say that we haven't claimed much, and I guess the perception. I guess to really understand what the risks might be. What would the risks be if there was a massive storm went through and we had some of these lesser value community facilities damaged? If they were written off, but then what? Like we've got material damage as one component. How much insurance is there on them for big stuff?
Well, it is replacement value at the moment based on the depreciated value of that particular. Take a look at the halls.
Yeah.
One thing, I should have clarified, is that a claim is per event. So if we had a big cyclone go through or a seismic event that hit one town, if we had our excess, say, $1 million, which is an alternative, it would all accumulate. It's not per property that we're insuring. It's per event.
Yeah. So that gives some comfort
It
for
does give
the bigger risk.
It does give, yeah, for the high level risks.
Yeah.
It does. We would cover. Yeah. Sorry. Questions.
So when I look at that schedule, there's a few buildings on in there. That's the depreciated value that's shown in there.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So one in particular struck me, and that was the tennis pavilion at the recreation ground.
Yes.
Who does it belong to?
Tennis club. But there is an arrangement that we can insure for that under our policy, and then that is coming back from the tennis club because it's their building.
So the Tailhay Hall, who does that belong to?
That belongs to the community.
So if Tailhay Hall, and I'm thinking more not catastrophic cyclonic events, but the thing burns down.
Yes.
What do we do with Tailhay Hall?
At the moment, it's covered in insurance. The insurance will pay out. The question is, which is outside of the scope of this paper, would this council want to rebuild it? Would the community want to rebuild it? It's a different matter. In other words, if we had a total loss of a building for a fire, community hall, and we weren't insured, so we didn't insure anything below $1 million, what would happen to that community and what would happen to that site? That's the question.
Tailhay Hall is insured under this at the moment.
Correct.
We pay the premium.
Yes, out of the targeted rate.
Out of the target. I'm just trying to get an understanding. So you don't think the community would want that replaced?
That's for the community to decide.
Right. So if the community said we want it replaced, it would cost considerably more than what's shown in there, but that's
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
So through, so my way of thinking, the fundamental question we're asking are, some of these buildings are buildings, if we're not going to insure them for replacement, we're actually accepting that they won't be replaced. And so that's a confronting question. Appreciate it. But we're doing the same thing with not funding certain depreciation on buildings, on reserves. We're saying we're not going to fund the depreciation on those buildings because something happens to them, probably not going to replace them. Or the community will decide how it will be replaced. So when you start looking at the buildings on the schedule, it can be quite confronting. But what I said to Roger is we can either be a taker in terms of our insurance premiums, or we can look at doing things differently and do a bit of self-insurance. And there's risk, of course, to that.
The only question I have is what have we learned from, in terms of the infrastructure part of the paper, what have we learned from places like Gisborne Council and all the councils that have recently had events? They weren't playing, like certainly not at the level of what's happened to them. And is there anything we can learn from that? And the other thing is that I know that sometimes insurance is kind of like we keep paying and paying and paying and getting little back. And when you talked about there was an event 1 in 10 years and stuff like that, when you measure that up against how much we're paying out, it doesn't make any sense that we should be paying this level of insurance for stuff. Now I know that I see our community hall down here, Okaia, and I know that it's pretty active. And I know that the women's industry and so many, and the farmers and everybody is there, and it's just the type of community project that Okaia will get behind and rebuild if we don't, if something happens to it. But at I guess the normal, not a whole replacement of it, but as long as we've got some insurance on it, because it's usually windows or doors that might be broken or things like that. But nothing has ever happened to that hall, but I know there's a real community spirit to continue to support it. So, yeah, it's just a question of what have we learnt and how can we use that in order to make the decisions.
Well, certainly, from a Gisborne point of view and other councils, as I say, as I see it, some councils have been underinsured. They have not kept up with inflation and the costs construction industry over the last couple of years. Certainly post-COVID, 15-20% increases in materials and labour is way above the average inflation. They haven't kept up with that. What I've tried to do here is to make sure when the valuations are done every 2-3 years, and that's for rating purposes, I then look at those and apply an insurance value to it. Now, the insurance value is generally higher. You've got demolition costs, site clearance, maybe hazardous substances. You've then got to get all the various consents that you might require for that. So the insured value of a building could be higher than the residual value that's actually in it, what it's actually worth on our books. So we're actually insured for higher than our book price. And that's a precautionary approach. But you're right, if we really continue to insure at the same level as what we have done over previous years, I suspect this year's premiums will probably be about $1.2–1.3 million. Is that affordable to this council based on the risk? And we can look at our historic risk here.
And that equation alone, based on the risk, and if you use the example of 10 years, I think it's out of sync, isn't it?
Well, from what I'm seeing, over a 10-year, it's a minimal risk, in my view.
Okay.
I'm just slightly off track and pulling back into if I had to off track. How do you actually make this list? How does a building actually get onto this list?
Sorry?
How does a building get onto this list?
It's on our asset list. So part of the asset strategy and policy, they have an asset list of all our buildings that we own as a council.
That you own as a council?
That this council owns, yes.
So I had some discussions earlier about communities paying.
Yes, sorry.
A building.
Yeah, to see that. We can add on community-owned buildings under our policy. That is allowed. So things like Matamata eyesight, that is actually insured by this council. Some sports clubs elect to use our insurance. But there is a higher excess because it's a commercial insurance. It used to be 10,000 and now proposing 25,000. So any claim you've got to find now 25,000.
So then my question becomes, how can Marae make this list given purposes that they fill within the community and given the functions they serve similar to
Right, yes, but in theory, yes. We need the value of that property, the details of it, the address, etc. And I'll go through it for our broker. We use Aon as our broker.
But sorry, but that's not on council land, is it?
No.
Is that different?
That's a differentiates council land.
It can do at times. Yes,
You could do it, but what's on that list are community buildings on council owned land.
Yes.
Right. I think we face a big risk from our community if we don't insure.
So that's fantastic, because what it's getting us to is what the recommendation that's in front of us, either maintain the current or to remove the material damage on the building predominantly within this list, right? So I've got a couple of questions, because within the report it talks about the age of buildings used by the community, requirement for core services and potential risk of not insuring. So I guess from my perspective, when I read the paper, I didn't have an understanding of what that age, usage, core services or risks look like, which I think would be really helpful to form the discussion to understand which ones would or do need to be insured and which ones not. And similarly, what the communication in relation to that to those community organisations would need to look like. And then the other thing is similar to public begrudging parking what do you call it, speeding tickets, where does the money go? Does it go back into roading improvements similar here? If we save money on the premiums, does that go into some fund somewhere in case something happens for an event?
And that would be, that's certainly one approach to self-insurance, that the premium saving is held as a fund that can be used to meet claim costs, and or it won't meet any big event, but it could meet claim costs like the 25, like whatever claim below, that comes up that would otherwise be claimed for insurance. So you're absolutely right, that's an option for sure.
Do I take it then that if I was to hire a hall for $100, $10 of that $100 will go to insurance? Or are we looking over and above it?
So are we talking about, sorry to chip it, are you talking about a rural hall?
Any kind of building, is there a cost when you hire out a building that includes $10 from the appropriate amount for insurance?
No. And the only time that you would be required to take out your own insurance if there is some risk associated to the event, where we would say you need to take out some liability insurance for that event. But otherwise, the cost of insurance is included in the operating costs, all other operating costs, and the fees and charges contribute to all of that.
Let me just add, for the hireage of some halls, there are bonds. That's where the risk is sort of addressed around hireage, which is a different component to what material damage might mean in this case. I'm quite interested in the concept of perhaps if we don't do insure to the fullest extent, that there is a fund that is put aside so that we do self-insure to help manage that risk. That is a way to mitigate exposing us to risk or something.
Yeah, that's one factor, and the other one is Janie, is the issue of just, it's not. I don't think we should blanket the thing. I think we should do a very careful analysis of what we think we should insure for, and those that we could take off. And I get back to the tennis pavilion. The tennis pavilion belongs to the tennis club, right? And yet it's under our cover. And then we'll probably say, well, we probably wouldn't replace it. Well, if the tennis club knew it was covered under our cover, they would want it replaced. So yeah, there's a big risk in community understanding.
And I think the point that you want to raise yourself, those rural halls, those communities might be more than happy paying in their targeted rate for that insurance. So we wouldn't just remove it, and we typically go back to them and say, this is what's happening to the premium. What do you want to do?
It's a big pool.
So within the paper, it talks about premium renewal on the 1st of November, similar areas.
Correct, yes.
There's a very short turnaround time to make that happen. So in terms of the process, after a decision has left here, does it go to council for approval, or do you guys just start working on it based on the decision today?
It would depend how significant the decision is.
Yeah, okay. So what I'm hearing though from the members is that there is enough information within that table to understand the risk of not insuring every individual item of that.
I could do more work on this. All I'd say is we really need to confirm reinsurance for 1 day. It's a week or so away, but we can do some changes post 1st of November. We would get a premium refund. Yeah, we did do. So there can be an adjustment, but it is important to renew our insurance on 1st of November. The reason it comes late every year is they're going to get the best prices in the market at the last minute.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental change to what we're doing, and this is almost long-term plan consultation on this sort of thing. That's how I see it.
Okay, Kevin, you have a question?
Probably more of a statement. I'm not sure that I could I could be agreeing with this. If it was a catastrophic event of the district and we lost all of these buildings, that's a very significant situation. And I know it says in the paper that the staff don't think it's significant enough to consult on, but I believe it probably is. And I'm not sure I could survive, or we could survive, the front page paper test on this if we decided not to insure all these buildings and there was a catastrophic event and we couldn't rebuild any of them because it was hundreds of millions of dollars. That's a huge risk. If it was one building burnt down or fell down or whatever, then we could make that decision. But if a whole lot of them were to be damaged or not be around, then that's a huge risk that I don't think I could put my hand up and say I'd be to take.
Thank you, Kevin. Me, Adrian.
So to get my head around this, like for the just, you know, there's pavilions, there's tennis and all sorts. Is there in the rental for that there's a component there for insurance? Because if we're collecting it, people need to have the choice. The users need to have the choice. They technically own the building. It just happens to be on council land. And surely the users should have the choice to insure.
So we have rental agreements with people that say they will pay the maintenance cost of buildings. As we know, in the case of Domain, there's two organisations up there that don't pay the maintenance costs because they can't afford it. So, and I believe it's the same with other properties that we have on our reserves. It's look, this the main thing that we wanted to do is to raise the principle of whether we continue to be a price taker or whether we decide to look at some self-insurance. We can renew on 1 November and we can do further work. We can put the proposal up into the LTP and build. I think the fundamental question that we're asking is, and go back to the point that Councillor Tappan raised, if there was a significant event that wiped out a number of these buildings on the schedule, would we replace them all? And I suspect we wouldn't. We wouldn't, be honest, and I'll be controversial. The Chaha grandstand here at Boyd Park, it's with all due respect, I don't know how many times in a year that's full. So, you know, and a significant event would prompt some hard decisions. But there's some buildings, obviously, you would replace. So that's part of this discussion which we're trying to tease out. But there's no, look, we can renew from 1 November, and I get your point that you want to see that risk profile analysed further, and we can, if we come back to you, when we come back to you and show you that profile, we can see whether we can get a premium reduction if there's any decision to take some properties off the schedule.
In terms of reading the room, that's where I get the sense that we're heading. So I get the sense that we're looking like maintaining the current for the rollover of November, and then doing further analysis in relation to the items that are on this particular schedule to understand the risk in terms of if there was a significant event and we weren't going to use that building, what that looked like. Do I read the room right?
Yeah, and I guess the thing around excesses is what is the maximum excess? Like, because obviously it only reduces it, so it's 25,000 the chosen excess or the best excess to manage this.
That's what the underwriters are asking for this year. What I will do though is to ask Aon if we elected to have an excess of $1 million but still cover all buildings, what difference would that make to the premium? And I'll read that back to you.
Yeah, because that's the thing, isn't it? It is around that.
Because it would be it would be on a major event. This council would only have to find $1 million.
I think we have landed. So the recommendation in my mind is that the committee agree to maintain the current levels of insurance, and for the team to review each of the properties. So on there, giving the committee more information about the risk that it poses by removing them from the material damage cover.
That's going to.
Can I have a mover in a second?
I'll move that.
So we've got Councillor Bruce moving.
Happy to second.
Oh.
Yep.
You can have the next one, Kevin.
Oh. Okay, that's good.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Nine. And we need to vote. Yeah, and all those in favour?
Aye.
It's Gary, come on. Thank you, Adrian. The next item on the agenda is 7.3, the legislative compliance framework. Do we have Ellie? Yes. Yeah, put it, Ellie. So ultimately we'll take the report as we have, and then if you could give us a brief summary of the main points for our consideration, that would be great.
Easy as. So yes, we take it as read. The main points that are worth mentioning are really the areas of non-compliance or where we are currently under review. And I do have one additional comment that didn't make it to me in time for the agenda from 3 waters, or one item that I'll mention. Pretty much the main areas of non-compliance, we've got the Public Body Leases Act, but we're never in compliance with this, mainly because the Act stipulates we have to go out for public tender for all leases that we undertake, but it's a big job. It's not worth the time nor money that it would cost for small grazing leases and licenses and things like that. There's a new one of the biosecurity pest management plan, and it's to protect kauri trees in our reserves, but staff are still underway in determining where we have kauri trees in our reserves and land. And then from there, once they have that, they will determine a plan to manage them and mitigate any risk that there is in order to comply. And then for both the Resource Management Act and Building Act, we have stipulations that we must complete a consent within 20 working days, and we don't meet that threshold for 100% of consents that are received. That's not unusual. It is probably, it'd be a big year for us if we ever got 100% on both of those. Public Records Act is quite straightforward. It requires that how we hold our data, how we hold our records are done in a certain way to maintain them for a long period of time, and we just cannot meet that threshold. But as per everything else, we're working our way towards it, and staff are slowly scanning everything, and so we have that backup, and that data became more data, to be fair. And then there is the Lagoima Act, where we receive requests from the public. That's another one where the Ombudsman says, and the legislation says, we should respond within 20 working days, and we don't always do that. And then there are areas of under review, the new Resource Management Act, that has a rolling district plan that's always under review, and bylaws, things like that, and paper roads in our district, which are just always around. And I'll just mention the one update that there is to the Health Act in regards to our free waters, that the interim annual report results show compliance with the bacteriological standards part 4 up until December last year, but we missed but all networks missed compliance with part 4 in December due to incorrect number of samples being collected. Majority of networks have since been in compliance with the requirements, and the protozoological standards part 5 has been regressed due to the shift from monthly to daily compliance periods. Non-compliance against part 5s are technical in nature, and the completion of the upgrades and implementation of programming in the plants has significantly improved our compliance with that. Cool. Any questions?
Thank you, Elaine. So the recommendation in front is to receive and comment. So any comments?
Mind-bogglingly.
Bureaucratic.
Yeah.
And I guess it just highlights the regulators' influence now in this framework.
It's actually also a really good indicator of sometimes why council can't be quick in implementing things and changing items and undertaking work. There are so many regulations and requirements we have to meet when we do work that it isn't just straightforward of, can you put this bench in a reserve or an easement? No, we can't. We have to go to LINZ. We have to go and get the registration allowance from central government. It's just not always a clean cut. Yeah. Any other questions? Kevin, did you? Oh, yes, you do.
Yeah, just a comment. Look, I'm sure the Ellie and her team are doing everything they can to be as compliant as they can in the required timeframes. The cost of 100% compliance would be astronomical and not worth the effort. So, just as we are right now, I think we're probably as compliant as probably every other council in the country. So, yeah, we're good.
Thank you. And I have the utmost faith in our staff that they are always trying for compliance and they're always striving towards as much compliance and as well as we can handle everything as possible. There's never a team that I know that will ever let that slide. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, Ellie. Just one question from me in terms of, we have areas that we're always non-compliant with because of the excessive expectation. Do we do any significant training or anything in those areas to give us a fighting chance for those areas where it is under our control? It doesn't really fall into the area of training would fix it. It's normally the systems we have in place or requiring additional systems. So for paper records, they should be held in air-locked like areas and things like that. But we have many paper out there that are in boxes that are not in that regulated airtight thing. We have things off-site that are, and that's really good, but not all of them are. And so there's things that we just cannot change. Yeah.
Yeah. And in your opinion, out of the breaches, are there any that are more significant than others in terms of the risk to residents and ratepayers?
Actually, no, this year we are looking really good. Our non-compliance has been much better actually than in previous years.
Excellent. Yeah. And ultimately it's balancing the risk of the impact of the breach versus the amount of money, to give us what that we spend from an operating cost perspective. So thank you. The recommendation in front of us is to receive, and we have commented. Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Yeah, just one comment when I was reading, and I will always look for it, is the Vulnerable Children's Act, and it's around the pools, and I read the comments about contractors and just in relation to when it comes to children, which is probably I don't even want to contain, the hardest thing to contain and to look after. But when I was reading through the whole chart, I was thinking, well, unless I'm compliant, can you do any work? By the time you try and be compliant, that's your work day. You don't even get to do the job. And so I know that there have been various organisations where children or the supervision or the consequence of something else has had an impact on children. So I just always want to raise that, and if anything, everything might get us criticised for something, children will destroy us if we're not careful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great comment, Joanne, thank you. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
I'll move.
Moving and nice try, Kevin. Sorry, Councillor Kevin. Seconding, all those, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Kia thank you, Ellie. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 7.4 council policy reviews. Oh, welcome. Aren't you good?
I nearly didn't recognise you for a while. No, it's a long now.
So Niall knows the drill. Taken as read any brief summary and over to the committee for comments and questions. Given Niall, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. So yes, this report is a list of the policies that council has. The way I've set this list out is the external facing policies that are largely adopted by council. Then we have the I've made a note, some policies are reviewed by this committee. We've identified our particular grants and funding policies. and our bylaws that we have, our regulatory bylaws, and noting there was one bylaw that's under preparation. That's our freedom camping bylaw. And then all of our internal policies, most of which sit with our people safety and wellness team because they relate to HR issues. But there was a couple of others there. So you're happy to take any questions. We have established a system internally, a policy register database. Unfortunately, the system is in error at the moment, so we haven't actually been able to run the report as we normally would. So we've collated this in a more manual way. So it does, there is a couple of gaps where you'll see some of the policy data is missing, but yeah, we'll hopefully get that database fixed shortly. But yeah, happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Questions, Steve?
The only thing I'd ask is obviously with the timing of doing, reviewing policies and things like that, is and some of them get carried over for a long time. So I guess are we comfortable in what we are achieving and keeping our policies up to date in the process that's the review in your, well, I guess that probably putting the pressure on you now, but there's some that we haven't yet addressed that we need to be, I guess, is the risk around having things up to date.
I think for our statutory policies, we are very, we definitely keep to the required review schedule. Excuse me. Because obviously there's a legislative time frame around that. The ones that are more the discretionary type policies can slip depending on priorities. And there's probably some other areas which we could look at in the future. For example, the council has talked about climate change as an example, and whether we need to set a policy or strategy around that. Our internal policies, again, the timing of those can shift, and we don't always achieve the review as scheduled. And this committee has noted a couple of those examples in relation to the audit recommendations that have been made. But I think for the ones that we're statutorily required to do, we absolutely achieve those.
Yes, and that's the critical part, isn't it? Is again, it's the time you spend reviewing things for what material difference is probably the point here, isn't it? Well, thank you, Mark.
No, I just wanted to reflect on the governance statements and just maybe the review due for 2022 and the component of mighty engagement within that statement and how we might be progressing towards that.
So that governance statement, it's got the review on the 1st of December 2022. So that was actually done after the election. The council signed off on the governance statement last year, just post-election. So that actually that date should be changed to the next election or after the next election in 2025. So the date hasn't been updated. So where it says adopted on 2019, that should actually be 2022. So that's just the date is not quite correct there.
So it'll now be 25.
Yes. Yeah. But basically that's kind of the summary of how the governance structure at council operates, and yes, for the training and basically at each election.
I was particularly interested in the mighty engagement processes that are currently underway.
Yeah. And thank you, Niall, for pulling this together, because from my perspective, it gives this committee an overview of all the different policies, front-facing and internal, that are out there, and for me, even more so, the trajectory of those policies in terms of an approval process. So I was really keen to see the ones that should come to this committee, and whether when they come to this committee, that's where they stop, or whether they go through to council as well. So an example of that being, via Joanne's point, child protection, or delegations. So I see we've got delegations today. So I wanted to have an understanding whether if we provide comment on it, does it then go to council for approval? Like which ones of those internal facing ones go through to council for approval? Because I note that in some of them it says Dom's the approver.
So in most instances, all of those ones that are listed as internal would not have come before the elected members. They would have been signed off by the chief executive or through their executive team. So yeah, unless there might be a few exceptions occasionally where things have come to elected members. But yeah, generally that's decided internally and advice may be sought from this committee, but the approval has been the chief executive or the executive management team.
And in terms of this report, will we be seeing this annually or biannually?
Well, this is the first time we've collated this for this committee, so I'm happy to take your guidance in terms of how frequently you would like to see these kind of updates, whether it's a standing item annually or yeah.
I'm not trying to create extra work. I'm just trying to get an insight into those. So quite often I'm used to some of these policies being considered governance policies, especially delegations. So I would expect that that would have followed through this committee and then to council for approval. Yeah, and so I think one of the things that we need to do is potentially as a committee and maybe as a council is figure out which one of those go where. And so it's great that we've got the starting point. So thank you for that. And a couple of ones that I thought would have been in there, which I didn't see, and correct me if I'm wrong, were legislative compliance and business continuity, whether there were specific policies on those. And I know that Ellie was just here, so I missed one moment. That's another thing that we can also look at or be mindful of is what else could be in there.
Yeah, I suppose that absolutely. I think there's probably a question mark in my mind around what might be in this list versus what might not be. So, for example, we have the legislative compliance framework. Yeah, that's not necessarily a policy, but do we include it in here regardless? We have, for example, that annual report, that's not a policy either, but, do we include it in here as well? So there were some things kind of on the periphery that, yeah, we were, it's about what should be in the list and what should be off the list. Give to take your guidance.
Yeah, thanks. No, I think it's good that you provided it to give us that starting point. It would be nice if it came back, say, in 6 months' time, or once we've had a chance to consider, and then if there is anything that we do want to see or we think should be in there, also we can consider it then. Other than that, Joanne.
There was just one comment that was made when I was going through the policies, the asset register policy not properly maintained. It was something that it was one of the notes that I picked up on, and I thought, oh, is there a reason for that? I'm not asking you to.
Sorry, can you just? I'm sorry, not sure.
It was 2.5.2. Asset register not properly maintained.
Is that contained within this report or it's separate?
It comes under. It was 7.4 and it was under council policy review. So in the night when you're reading, the numbers all look the same. I think it's part of the Three Waters project, which is another note that I'll put down beside it. However, just in terms of the register, like the asset register, I know that the big movable things were noted, but smaller things were not noted necessarily. And now I know. And things like, I don't know, if you have trucks and stuff like that, that's noted in your register, which should be. But individuals using computers and phones and everything, it's not necessarily maintained. And so that might be fine when you're talking about one or two, but if you talk a lot of that stuff, then that's a good amount of funds that might not be on a register somewhere to say that this is here, this is part of our assets. It stood out to me because having in a former life responsibility for items that registered items, assets, how much cost that is on an organisation. If we don't know where everything is, you know, like, and even when we're replacing, we don't know what happened to the last stuff, and then you walk into a room and there's this whole room full of stuff. It's just an efficiency exercise as well.
You're really looking for clarity around that.
Yeah, well, yeah, because we can have a whole lot of stuff moving.
Have we found it where it is in this?
I think that relates to one of the audit recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry,
all
I
right.
think it's the.
Yeah, it's not in this
Financial
item.
or anything.
I think it's going to come up in the.
Oh, yeah.
It's not in this item.
So we'll,
Yeah,
we'll hold that.
report item.
Sorry.
We'll hold that question, and
Okay.
if there aren't any other questions in relation to this particular report, could I please have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? We've got Ms. Gary is moving and the Adrian is seconding. And so if we could see that come back in 6 months' time, and that'll give us enough time to consider a couple of the pertinent things that were discussed. Sorry, hi Joan, you've got your mic on. Did you have another question?
No.
Okay, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Carrie. Thank you, no.
Thank you. Can I just for some guidance for me in terms of collating that next report for you, would you like it to be more explicit in terms of the ones that are coming to this committee? And
I think it would be good if the ones that are coming to this committee were reflected in our work program. So it would be good if they were reflected in terms of the trajectory of these are the ones that are going to come over, let's just say the triennium as an example. But if it's coming, if the December one, it would be nice for it to feature on our work program. And then our action is to have a think about that prior to it coming next time, and then ask ourselves what we would change. Okay, cool. Thank you. No. Excellent.
Did you get crunchy?
Oh, so Niall. So Niall, last time you mentioned it's crunchy time with LTP. So these are in honour of you, but to be shares as we all got. Yeah, if we could get that tonight, that would be great. Thank you. The next item on the agenda, a big item actually, thank you, no, is 7.5 to review the annual report, and Narnia and again. And online we should have our Audit New Zealand team, which is Renee and Claudia. Welcome Audit New Zealand colleagues, and welcome ladies in the room.
Thank you. Good morning.
I'll hand it over to those in the room to maybe give us a bit of a quick update, and then Audit New Zealand if you would like to give an update after that, and then we'll open it up to the committee for questions and comments. Kia ora.
The annual report 2022-23 and the annual report summary have been prepared and are on track to be adopted by Council tomorrow, 25th of October. This means we're on track to achieve the adoption of these documents within the statutory timeframe. We've received draft audit opinions and letters of representation, and we expect to receive the finals of both of these this afternoon. I would note there's been some further minor changes to the documents since the ones you've seen. In terms of the non-financial reporting, this is some additional explanations of some of our results where they have varied significantly from last year, and also a scale which further explains achieved, potentially achieved, partially achieved and not achieved scale. I think Lania also has a few additional changes. In terms of the non-financial reporting, a large focus has been on adapting to the new FRS 48 standard, which is overall about making sure that the information we provide is appropriate and meaningful in explaining our performance. So broadly, that has involved adding some additional context information as to how the measures we report on relate to our overall purpose as an organisation, adding any disclosure of judgments around the measurement, aggregation and presentation of the information, and providing some additional commentary on each measure to make sure that the general public could easily understand what we have achieved. In terms of what we have achieved in this year, we reported against 57 measures across the 8 activity groups. Of these, we achieved our target on 33, partially achieved the target on 2, did not achieve our target on 21, and did not report against 1 measure this year.
Thank you. Naomi, did you want to add something?
Firstly, I just firstly just wanted to acknowledge the auditors and thank them for the process has been so much smoother this year. It's been really good communication. We've had a consistent team, and they've put a heck of a lot of effort to get us ready for tomorrow. I've seen emails at stupid o'clock in the morning and on the weekends and stuff. So just wanted to say big thank you and appreciate that. As Anne said, there's still some minor tweaks that we need to make to the document ready for tomorrow. Very minor. We'll put together a schedule of what those changes were between what you've seen ready for tomorrow. The main change you'll see in terms of the financials is Audit made a very fair comment that in our financial summary we had a couple of graphs that had operating and capital expenditure, but they didn't really tell much of a story because there's no budget information next to them. So we've fixed that in the draft you'll see tomorrow. And just updated capital commitments. There was one contract we had missed out. There'll be a full schedule tomorrow of what's changed. We don't believe there's any misstatements that will be in the letter of representation. I think we've fixed any of that with material. There's just one last query we'll sort out today. Otherwise we've provided the financial warrant of fitness with the information you've seen. So the idea of this is just to highlight any issues that have arisen during the year and to give you some confidence that we've dealt with all the matters we need to. This year explains some of the effects of the new accounting standards that we've dealt with this year. Audit have raised an issue this year about that we need to each year review how we establish the fair value of our investment in the airport. Against the new accounting standard. That's something different this year. And also in there's highlighted that we changed our value methodology for how we value our buildings. That was probably the key things that were in the warrant and fitness. But were there anything else on the warrant and fitness? Joanne's raised some issues about the IT equipment that we at this stage don't do a stock take.
We'll probably get to that soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if there's any other things you want to talk about? Yeah.
I just want to open the floor for Claudia and Renee if they've got any comments, and then we'll open it to the White Committee. Thank you, lady.
Thank you. Through the chair. Good. Is it still morning? Yes. Good morning, everybody. Just want to say thank you from our side for management's support and assistance during this audit. So as you would have known from our planning, our main audit focus areas were our management override, where we look at any potential fraud risk, the fair value of all the PPE classes, and then also the adoption of the new FRS Standard 48 for the performance reporting side. So the audit is concluded. We are finished with the audit, as Lania said. Our next steps after tomorrow will be to prepare the report to council. So that we'll do at a next meeting. We'll have a draft report that we'll circulate first to management and finalise that process, and then bring that report to council for discussion. So that's the next steps. And basically that's everything from our side. So just if there's any questions, happy to take them.
Right. Let's go, team. Thank you, Bamboo, on this.
Yeah, I just again just grateful that we've got through in this time frame. It's sort of like, wow, And of course, it's the length of these reports now that are just so long, but I'm sure it didn't seem that long last year when I was reading through, but this has got really long and it's really hard. Like for an average person reading it, it's a cure for insomnia, I'm sorry. You know, like it's hard reading. It's long and slow, but anyway, we're compliant and not too many hiccups along the way, which is great. So well done, team, and I think also just well done to the staff too, as well. Thanks to Renee and Claudia, but also the audit team, also with our council staff and how you've managed it this year. And it's great to be at this point.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Hi, Joanne, did you want to ask your comment or ask your question now in terms of assets?
No, I'm a bit scared. Yeah, so I went through and I was just trying to pick up on stuff that, you know, first of all, I'm really amazed at how, once you've got the policy review, then you've got, you know, like these reviews and stuff and how anybody does any work and then how you keep up on top of it. And I think one of the questions is there an easier way for this to happen so that you have a picture but you don't have to go through everything again every year? Or is that impossible? You just have to go through.
It's kind of part and parcel of the job.
Yeah. I not that I don't think that that's important that it's gone through, but it's kind of like we're compliant there and then we're compliant there and then we're compliant there, and there must be something that links the whole lot up to kind of make the work, because I don't know how then you turn around and do, what do you do? You know, like, how do you do your work when you're so trying to be so compliant and all that?
Not very well some days, to be honest.
No, I just, I appreciate all the work, and it's little things that I was picking up on, and I thought I need to know more about something, and no doubt that you'll be able to feed me back, feedback if I needed more detail, but great work.
I just had one question just on page 32 or 13 of the annual report, just with that graph around our balanced budget benchmark. And obviously the years are missing across the bottom of the table, but I see we're trending down, you know, like 96, 95, 93, 90, 85. What do we need to do differently? Or what are the risks? Speech marks, not me.
No, that one.
It's page 32 or 13 of the annual report, 32 of ours, 13 of the annual report in green. Yeah, just to give me some clarity around that, because it's trending down. We're not staying at the same level. So just
I guess that one, so that's talking about operating, our operating expenses, revenue as a proportion of operating expenses. So we have given some comment there that, you know, we aim to break even, but there's things like asset disposals and that come into that equation. So it's always going to be up and down.
I think the concern is the trend down.
Yeah.
And so when we were talking about paying for our groceries, this to me says that we're not.
No, particularly, I mean, we know water, we know we had issues in water. I think the operating deficit for water was about 2.5 this year. So we've tried to address that in this year's budget. But yeah, I mean, the costs are escalating there, and we're not funding it at that level. And we also, particularly in the consents area, had a blowout this year. So in terms of our there was a lot of costs. We had the consultants in to cover the level of work that was going on, and at the same time our income started to drop. So it was still a perfect storm in that area this year. So that is why we're saying that the trend is the way it is.
And from a future focus perspective, that's what I think that Adrian, what is the turnaround point, what needs to happen so that that trend of the graph doesn't continue that slide.
Yeah, so that's something we need to look at when we're developing the budget for the LGP.
Yeah. And I guess leading on to that is the current year, we're only just finished the first quarter, so it's a bit early to get a feel for where it might sit. So we'll be happy to keep an eye on that to see what the reflection.
Let's start working on the first quarter's report now. So
Yeah, and is it too late to put the years in that graph?
it is in the final. Final.
Thank you.
That one. Yeah.
Cool. I don't see any questions at the moment, so I'm gonna start with mine.
Just one thing. Just one thing, a few things. Firstly, Lania, it's good to hear that I'm not the only one that works at stupid o'clock. That's great. I didn't even know anyone knew what that time was. Excited to hear that the audit's going smoother this morning. If anything about audits can be considered to be exciting. And delighted to hear it is going smoother, and assume that means more cost effective and cheaper. Thank you to Audit New Zealand and NPDC staff, because I know, as Adrian said, you know, it's a little bit of a cure for insomnia reading through all of that stuff. Not something you'd want to do in one great big block, I'm assuming. So it's just why audits take so long, people. It's great to hear that everything's going smoother this year, and look forward to going through that table and ticking things off tomorrow.
I'm going to go if that's all right. So on page 25, we mentioned the LGFA, and so we couldn't find a fair value, and so we've taken the approach of so if I shape my question, the question is, what is the approach that the other councils take in relation to that, to land them at a fair value?
Sorry, is that LGFA, did you say?
Yeah, on page 25.
Sorry, I'm looking at a different document to you. I believe we're all using the same approach to that. It's pretty consistent across the sector.
It's good to get context on that one. Thank you. I'm going to keep going. Adrian covered that one. Page 43, we've talked about this at the last meeting in terms of the council committees and the chairs for the hearings and CEO performance committees. I thought that we were talking that was going to be reflected as being Adrian at the last one. So you being the chair of the CEO.
Yeah.
It's on page 43. I don't know what page it is for you.
I was looking at the annual report document. So it's that.
Yeah, it just had no chair for the CEO review committee because there was nothing formally in it. It just sort of seems a bit weird. And yeah, we did talk about it last time.
I think it's page. I see it as page 43. There's also a page 6 at the bottom of this one.
Oh, okay. Yep.
It's with the pictures of all the council elected members, sorry, I should say.
Okay, we can.
So I thought that we were going to reflect at least the CEO performance committee is met Adrian.
So it has no chairperson.
Okay, that's easy then.
Did we land on the hearings commission as well?
Well, it's been delegated to Councillor Tappan. We don't actually have a chair, with a chair qualification with the Hearings Commission, but he does. That is written in here somewhere. So whether you could just clarify those 2 points would be good.
Relative minor point, but still, because we raised it last time, I think I need to raise it again this time. Page 45, there's a diagram in terms of the long-term plan. And so I don't think there's a need for a change, but to me it would have been helpful to say you are here in terms of where we are in that cycle, or maybe I missed it. So there's a diagram, page 8 for you, page 45 you don't think that. Just for readers, I mean, there's enough to go through already. I always look for X marks the spot. Page 73. Long story short, it's about the receivables, and they've increased significantly. So I just wanted to see if there was any comment on that, especially our over 90 days last year was 281k, and this year 620k. And my concern with that being the collectability and the impact on us in relation to that.
So probably the biggest factor in here is development contributions. So all the developers get in before the 30th of June because they know that fees are going to go up. So a lot of that is development contributions, and we always get those. And in terms of the comparing to last year for the days overdue, we actually found that in the previous 2 years we haven't been when we closed off the accounts receivable, we closed it off sort of 10 days after year end, which didn't give us an accurate dating of our collectibles. So actually the information in the previous years probably wasn't 100%. We've made some, we closed off accounts receivable a bit later again this year, so we've made some assumptions in this one. Going forward, we are going to close off on the 30th of June because we still see the impact.
Thanks, Lani. I think there's more insurance in that space. Thank you. I'll just point out for members that on page 90, it talks about self-insurance. So there's no fund for self-insurance, but there is 5.4 million, a 5.4 million term deposit that could be available for that space. So that might be a helpful note for us to consider for the next one. And I guess in that space, are we going to fund a rainy day through operation? Oh, no, I'll ask it for Lani. Do we fund a rainy, so if something significant happened and we didn't have insurance to cover it, would we generally cover it from operating expenditure or sorry, operating budget, or would we need to go and source some debt for it? I guess it depends how big it is.
Yeah, be a combo of both.
Okay. Good point. But just want to make people aware that there seems to be money available. Page 104 and throughout the report as well, I just wanted to check that we've got a robust consent policy in relation to photographs of children, especially children at pools. And I don't know who this question is for.
I can't answer that one.
I believe we do. That's our content. Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to double check it because
when there's a photographs taken, we have to get authorization.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that that was tight. And then on page 159, so I'm going to have to find the page that it is for you, but it's in the SSP and Audit New Zealand, so comments from the external audit have specifically been included in there. And I was wondering why for that particular measure. It's to do with the playgrounds. Still at 159, I don't know, my one's just failed.
That's under parks and tracks, I believe. Let me have a look.
So what I wanted to get a sense for is what triggers a comment from Audit New Zealand being reflected in our.
Oh, that's probably actually not Audit New Zealand's. It's probably a student playground.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I didn't understand why that was there. It didn't make any sense. I'm finding out, team. There was a misstatement that's not necessarily in this paper, but in another attachment. So that misstatement has now been fixed for 377,000.
Yeah, that was in the commitments.
Okay, right. In terms of commitments, and then in terms of the opinion, and maybe this is for Audit New Zealand, if you could give us a sense of what the opinion was last time, and if there's any difference in terms of what the opinion is this time, except for the emphasis of matter in relation to water services. Thanks.
There's no change except for the water services EOM.
The other thing I'll say is huge congratulations to the team. Actually, there's a lot of information in there, and these committees can focus on where we haven't satisfied the particular measures, but it's great to see a lot of the measures we've done really well in those spaces. And it's good to see that, although you mentioned stupid o'clock and Lania, it's good to see a more positive space in relation to this year and comparative to last year, which is the only comparative that I've got. So thank you to you and your guys' teams, as well as Water New Zealand as well. Do we have any other comments? Otherwise, we're going to move to the recommendation, which Steph is going to highlight for us, because it's changed slightly because we don't have the final information in front of us. and I think we made this comment last in terms of the last statements as well, as even though it comes across as a surplus in the residents and rate, especially ratepayers go that you increased our rates, and I think it's always good to provide the context in terms of the why, and I think that the report did that really well, and I think that Adrian's report really summed it up in terms of in terms of what's happened, celebrating the successes and what's coming as well. So yeah, well, thank you to the team, and hopefully I've stalled enough so that Steph can actually put the recommendation out for us. So the recommendation is that we receive the following documents: the draft annual report and summary for 22-23, the draft audit opinions for the annual report and summary 22-23, the warrant of fitness for the annual report 22-23, and the draft letter of rec for the annual report and summary 22-23, and the final copies of the above documents and the misstatement schedule from the annual report for, oh my goodness, final audit to be circulated to the committee when received. And my understanding is that this committee should provide some level of assurance to council that we are satisfied, so that the annual report can be adopted.
That would be useful if the committee's working on that, so that when this is considered tomorrow, council's aware that you've considered.
Yeah. Anything else that you guys need? No, well, I am happy to move that one. May I please have a second? Yeah, must be.
What's being added there?
That's fine, yeah.
Yes.
To adopt the annual report.
Yeah.
So we have got Matamata-Piako moving. I'm seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against. Yeah. Again, thank you, team. Well done. It was a huge effort. Yeah. So congratulations. John, did you have any comments?
Yes, could I acknowledge the effort of the team, of course, and all the hard work they've put in. And also acknowledge Renee and her team for the difficult circumstances on which all parties had to operate. I mean, it's very important that the relationship between audits and the organisations is undertaken with respect and regard to the responsibilities that have to be discharged. And I would say that this year, despite the difficult circumstances, that respect and regard for each other was so thanks to Renee, and I'm sure her allegiances to New Zealand rugby are going to be on display on Sunday morning when we win.
Tested.
I'm sure. But also to Claudia, who I see on site too. I know Claudia has been in constant communication with Lania and worked through issues in a very collaborative manner. So thank you.
Sure, I heard shots fired for the game this weekend, but anyway. So Renee, maybe you could comment in terms of the time frame for the management report to come through based on the final audit. Because you did mention that in terms of process, but it would understand the time frame for that too. Thanks.
Yes, I actually don't have the time frame in front of me. I don't know, Claudia, if you've got our time frame with you.
We are going to do all possible to try and get that to your next meeting, but that's subject to us just agreeing on the management report with management as well.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. Good. What we might do, team, if that's okay, if we might move to our.
Thanks, Claudia.
Good, thanks, team. We might move to our self-assessment, the formal meeting. That's okay. Yeah. Which is item 7.7. on page, I didn't write it down.
89.
89.
Just trying to find another.
Have you got you down rates that you can put up the agenda on the side?
Do you know any people answer this from this committee?
Oh, are we going to get the fire, Joanne?
I think I know who the 12 probably.
So this is for us team to reflect on our performance or our self-assessment of ourselves as a committee. You will see from the report that we have received 4 responses from the committee members. Unfortunately, the results were published before I had the opportunity to say no, because I don't think, and Niall will probably, or hopefully Niall will agree with me, is because committee members can't unsee what they've seen. The ones who haven't completed the survey might be swayed by the comments that are in there already. So I understand, and I can see Niall nodding, but so from my perspective, we would have to take that as our final survey, unless we have to go back to, we have to do it again. So I guess I'm asking the committee for comments in relation to what they see in terms of the responses, because I didn't trend them. And the reason why is I thought that would have the opportunity to get the other committee members to complete. Whereas because the cat's out of the bag, so to speak, I don't know that we can do that. So Niall, would you mind making a comment on that, considering that you're used to seeing surveys more often than we are?
So you were just suggesting that the survey wasn't provided until the next meeting or the December meeting? Is that what you would?
So what I was going to do is, because 4 out of, how many do we have? 7? 4 out of 7 completed, and my initial recommendation was that the remaining 3 complete. However, because the results have been published for all to see, that could potentially sway the ones that haven't completed the survey yet. So I'm asking for your guidance, whether it would be worthwhile to open it for the other 3 or leave it as is. And then Adrian might comment too.
Suggested to provide the opportunity to leave it open for the other 3, accepting that, yes, they will have.
That might be answered. Yeah.
Yeah, and just make a note of that.
Yeah. Okay.
And considering those results in light of that.
So I guess my question is probably the burning one on the 3 that didn't do it, is why they didn't do it. Did they miss seeing it? Did they, did they run out of time? Did they forget? Because it's these opportunities that we need to actually make an effort, and it frustrates me that, the 3 didn't, just to put my 10 cents in. But if we can open it up and get them to do it.
It would already be open until the 6th of October.
The November.
So based on that,
it says the 6th of October was distributed to members and requested to be completed by the 6th. So I don't know if it's still active.
So what happened is I don't think the survey went out with enough time for the committee members to have a week. So the deadline was extended to about the 12th of October, I think it was, Steve. And as at the 12th of October, we had 4 out of 7 complete. So in terms of reading the room, what I'm hearing is open it again for the remaining 3 to complete the survey, despite being able to see what the responses were from the 4 that did complete. But we will have to note the trends at our next meeting, and then we'll also have to put a side note to say that it was completed in 2 parts.
See, that's not my feeling. I think that it's done.
Yeah.
I think people have seen it, and I think in itself that it's telling, probably why people haven't read. So when I saw it and I saw how many people answered, I thought maybe the council are going through the same thing. So the result, their comments will reflect on this process anyway overall. I think that we go with what we have and that we go to improve how we do that. And I think that you were quite clear as chair what you wanted us to do, and it had been mentioned a couple of times. And it's not on anybody, it's just maybe that's also a telling point for us. But yeah, you can't see what you can't, you know, you can't unsee what you see.
Ditto.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that for the sake of simplicity, we've done it over 50%. Do it, and I just encourage all members, if at all possible, to do it in future.
I agree with that. So, is Kevin there? Kevin, do you have any comments? It's okay if you don't. Put them in.
No, not particularly. I've missed that. Obviously, I didn't realise it had to be in by so quickly.
And that's a good point, actually. So is there anything administratively that we could do better to increase the chance of people seeing the survey?
You did mention it at the thing that was coming through, and you needed.
Other than put it in front of people's faces.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes we like to be spoon fed. That's okay.
Yes.
Good point. So thank you for completing the survey. We will. There's lessons learned for us for next summer round in terms of making sure that people have the opportunity, and if it's even calling and saying, can you please make sure that you do it, if that's what needs to be done to get a higher percentage, that's good. I will bring trends to the next committee meeting because I didn't consider them, because I thought that we may actually look at having the opportunity for the other members to complete. Other than that, I guess, sorry, yeah, Jen, you were going to say something?
Yeah, so I guess now that when we do discuss it, those that didn't answer it will have some input.
Yeah.
So yeah, good idea to carry it over.
Sorry. I think that the committee is doing a far different job to what we've done in the past, right? And that the charter and that comprehensive review has put us on the right track. And so I don't see great changes needed or anything, you know. So that's how I feel.
Thanks for that, team. So I'm guessing that the recommendation is that we receive the results of the self-assessment survey, and that I'll take an action to review the trends of that form. So we'll take an action to review it again at our next meeting in more detail in relation to what we have, and provide the opportunity for more comments to come at that particular meeting. Okay? I'm happy to move that. May I have a seconder? We've got Claire, Joanne seconding. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Kumana. Carried. Kia ora, team. If people are okay, shall we have one each? Yeah. Excellent. So I guess we stop the live stream. Enjoy your cup of tea, Kevin, or your poison.
Thank you.
Soon.
and welcome back. I hope you got a bit of a sugar hit so that we can keep pushing on through until lunchtime. We are at item 7.6 on our agenda, which is non-asset activity performance management. We have Laura and Niall presenting. So ultimately taken as red team in terms of the reports, but if you can give us a brief summary of the main points for our consideration, that would be fantastic. And the recommendation we have in front of us is to receive the report, provide feedback on the draft performance management framework, and also the feedback on the rating scale as well. So I'm looking forward to the kōrero, and over to you, Laura.
Kia ora, Madam Chair, and kia ora koutou. Today, I'm just going to run you through some of the proposed changes. We'll take the report as read, as a bit of background there. Just got a bit of a slideshow here. So we have two purpose documents, the chair has explained. We just want to talk about the proposed framework and some of the changes, and then we want to have a bit of a kōrero about the proposed changes to the rating scale for the customer survey. One of the changes that we are proposing is for libraries. There has been a few changes to the paper that was circulated in your attachment because subsequent to the writing of the report, we've had some workshops, discussions with staff, things like that. So for libraries, they're proposing to change the target around the first measure is the visitor numbers. They're wanting to maintain visitor numbers at the 22-23 level. So they have quite an ambitious program here around building user numbers through workshops and events. I'm confident at meeting this target. However, there's always a risk of not achieving it. It is quite a high target, so just pointing that out. And measure 2 is around customer satisfaction. We may need to change the measure slightly if we change the rating scale, because currently it's very specific. We're measuring satisfied or very satisfied, and if we change the rating scale, that may need to change as well. The emergency management one, we were looking to maybe amend this one to aid in understanding really around it for the community. However, this is set by the emergency management Waikato group, so it's fixed. We can amend the target, and we're proposing to increase our annual assessment score year on year. Some major changes around the communications and events. So they have 3 measures, but we're looking at removing one of them. So the first one around the delivery of events, we're wanting to deliver more events in partnership with the community, more around what works for them, rather than at the moment we've got a set program of events. We deliver that. We're looking at having that a bit more flexible. And the second measure is around our digital enablement. We're looking at increasing the number of projects that we're delivering from 1 to 3, and that's identified as a digital strategy. And then proposing to remove that measure as a customer survey measure around access to council information. That's incorporated into the above measure. We're doing a lot around improving our internal efficiencies and service to the customer in that digital strategy measure. For community leadership, we're looking at amending the performance measure for community leadership there to indicate a transparent and open democratic processing. We're proposing that this will be measured in attendance rate of mayor and councillors. And we're also continuing with our dialogue with Te Mana Whenua, a forum around that measure on tangata whenua involvement, because that is a measure we have struggled with in the past to land on a meaningful measure. So that is still in discussions. We have a couple of options there in your paper. And strategies and plans. So traditionally, performance around this measure has been mixed. So for 2024-25, we're recommending to set the measure at 48% with slight increases in subsequent years. This is one we have struggled to achieve, but we are wanting to build in some improvements into our measure for that one. And then finally, I believe we have building consents and monitoring. That the team there are wanting to add in a new measure around code of compliance certificates. The target is 100% that's required by legislation, but we want to show the community our work in that area. And also proposing to reduce the response to complaints. Currently it's within 10 working days, but it's 100%, but they're looking at reducing that to 95%. Reflects current resourcing and also allows a little bit of flexibility there. Yeah, so I'd like to open the floor, if that's okay, to any feedback. Any feedback, team? I'll start with a simple one while we're collecting our questions, and it's to do with the non-asset activity. So just clarification on that, and is there an asset activity? Yes, so that's just for the committees. Yes, there is asset performance measures. A lot of them are statutory. So things like roading, our waters, and it's kind of a fluid process because we're in the middle of budgeting. So they're being determined at the moment, and what we're hoping to do is bring them all together in a nice package for you. And that example that I sent to you by email on Friday is a big document that we're preparing at the moment, which is our compliance with our auditing standards. We have to do a lot of work around why we've chosen these measures, what they mean for the community. So yeah, the asset measures are currently in development, basically. Thank you. So committee, if we could direct our questions in relation to the proposed changes to the measures, and then I think we'll move into the rating scale next. Any questions in relation to the changes?
Madam Chair, just a question around the community leadership framework, and so what work is being done to identify that issue? Through the community leadership, so through the Matamata-Piako forum. Yeah. So what we're looking at doing is talking to the forum on the next agenda, because what we've found historically is we've changed the measure over the years. We haven't landed where what we're reporting on is a reflection of the true satisfaction of members, because of the way it's done currently. As you may know, it's through an internal survey, and so that's very dependent on kind of the number of people that fill out the survey. If it's like one or two, then we get, and hopefully they rate highly, then that's going to give us an incorrect depiction of satisfaction. So it could be that we keep with that measure when we are rating an internal survey, but it looks like we would have to make some internal changes to support that somehow, so that members be able to fill it out, whether or not that's like an item on the agenda or a specific time, and we could leave the room and people could discuss it, like trying to encourage people to complete the survey if that's something that they think would be an accurate measure, or if there's another measure that we should be using. So we haven't quite landed on a good measure for that one. Yeah, I might just comment. I think the work that we did around going and plan change before is probably indicative of a really satisfied Matamata-Piako group. And so if we could probably harness the good stuff that came out of that and reflect that in the measure in some way.
I guess to add to that though, the trend is definitely upwards, because if you looked at previous years, I don't think the rating was as high. So we're moving in a far more in the right direction. And I think the kind of was a key piece of it. And so I probably looked at that a little bit differently as well, because
later on in terms of the measures, we talk about shifting from satisfaction with the mayor and elected members to attendance at meetings. And so I wondered whether we had considered that type of measure for this when we're looking for, we will involve tangata whenua with mana whenua status in the decision-making process. And so I didn't quite correlate how a survey of people at the mana whenua forum equated to that we're involving tangata whenua, because by their very existence, they are involved. So to me, that's what I thought, why couldn't we consider an attendance?
So we've got option 2 then was to have at least 5 forum meetings, which I guess is a step towards that similar attendance flow. But yes, we could make them the same in terms of look at mana whenua attendance. If that's...
So I just thought I'll throw it open in terms of whether you're keener on option 2 versus option 1, especially.
Sorry, several good options.
So option 1 was 75% or more satisfied or very satisfied in terms of the survey, or option 2 is at least 5 formal te mana whenua more Matamata-Piako hui held annually. To align it with
getting consistency over the two.
Yeah, because if we're looking at changing from satisfaction with the mayor and elected members in that space, I'm not saying that they're equivalent. Just, do you have any sense in terms of guidance for the team, especially Matua Gary, about the satisfaction in terms of the survey or the number of meetings and potentially the attendance at those meetings?
I guess the driver for attendance is probably the key for me. So when I reflect on the Papukainga plan change, participation was up really high because the purpose was was relevant to the mana whenua forum. And so for me, that's a reflection of the agenda items that mana whenua have participated. And so maybe the measure is more about how effectively is the mana whenua forum contributing to decisions that improve outcomes for mine. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, because I want to come back to what the original level of service is, which is we will involve tangata whenua with mana whenua status in the decision-making process, because that's what we're ultimately trying to get to, right, in terms of that level of service. And I just...
Can you say that again?
The level of services we will involve tangata whenua mana whenua status in the decision-making process. So not Martha Waka at the moment, in terms of what that level of service looks like. But ultimately, the team are looking for guidance in terms of continue with the survey.
I mean, we're also open to is a measure that is outside option 1 or 2. Option 1 is what we've had for the last few years, but as Laura said, sometimes the sample size can be quite small, which can skew the results. We have now 6 mana whenua forum meetings annually. So we've suggested the target could be 5 to allow, sometimes we don't get a quorum because there's a lack of attendance. So a workshop's held or something like that, or there might be a tangi on at the time of the meeting, or something happens which means that the members can't attend. So we're just suggesting that we make it 5 to allow, a little bit of scope there. But we do schedule 6 meetings annually now.
Yeah, it used to be 4, and a lot of the papers were retrospective and not as more information received than actually proposing, with bylaws or the Freedom Camping bylaw.
Informative rather than consultative.
Well, but it's also giving the opportunity to participate, because previously, though it was reports received, there was no opportunity to participate. They were receiving the reports because it was retrospective.
Yeah.
So this is the critical point here is having enough meetings to give an opportunity to participate, for the forum to participate. Now, is that enough? Is the other question.
So thank you, Adrian. I think the critical point for me is that council has supported mana whenua to create some aspirations so that the agenda items might reflect some of those aspirations. I think within the paper that was presented to council earlier this year, that maybe there are some items in there that progress might be a measure of some sort.
I may make an observation. And Chair, the exercise, which I believe was well received and well supported to this point anyway, has been involved in Mother wastewater consent renewal, where we've been participated very actively. And if I pick up on Councillor Thompson's particular point where he said where outcomes are important for Māori, to participate and and it's about identifying perhaps about what things are important for Māori to participate in decision making. Maybe we need to give some reflection on that. How we can measure that.
Because the key word in the level of services involved.
Yeah, exactly.
In the past, it has been, I believe it's been meaningful involvement. So we've changed the wording over the years.
I might just make one further comment. I think Council's already, sorry, Bruce.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Council's already committed to do some work with Matamata-Piako in March next year, just to further articulate some of that, those aspirations, and from that might come a couple of measures maybe that we've all agreed on that might be reflective of progress.
The point is that if you look at option 1 and option 2, one says how many are involved, and the other one says, are you satisfied with your involvement? There's actually, I see it as two distinct they're quite distinct. One, you can have everyone turning up to a meeting, but if they're not satisfied with what they're getting out of it.
The only other thing I would just offer is that in terms of reporting on outcomes that are achieved, we just have to have a way of being able to report that, and a mechanism to be able to capture that information. So capturing how well a group of any size is providing meaningful input, it's just having a mechanism to be able to capture that and track that over time. Because obviously that's something that will be audited and they'll be looking for that documentation.
In terms of that survey, are the members of the Mana Whenua Forum asked, did they feel involved in council's decision-making process? Because it's a yes, no, right? So if they didn't, then...
My understanding is that it's actually on a scale. So it's like 1 to 10 type thing. I can't remember the exact scale, but I think yes, and effectively they score on a scale. The questionnaire also has other things in it. So it asks you a variety of other, how many meetings and, various, similar to the self-assessment that this committee does. It's the same kind of thing. And one of the questions in that is about, how well they feel that they've been, involved in decision making. And from that measure, we report on that through this annual report.
I've just got past the survey, so that's quite interesting. So, and there's a lot in that survey actually in terms of what they asked. Okay, so we need to land some weighting. So in relation to the one that is there at the moment, it talks about 2 options. Do we like either of those options? Both? Or something different? I guess is my first question. And let's be mindful that we've also got another 20 odd to go through. So 22 actually. I'll throw it out there. Is there any, does it have to be option 1 or option 2, or could you have them both there? Because you could get a feel, because if they were in the same vein, that it was yes, achieved or satisfied and the number of meetings. But if it was distorted that they weren't satisfied, but there was the number of meetings, then we know that we've got something to you know, like that's meaningful, that something's missed. I don't know, because one or the other doesn't really,
I see this too.
yeah, put the two in.
Because you can inadvertently you get to it anyway because you're measuring that nonetheless, right? So you all know how many you had scheduled, how many minutes you had scheduled. You will know how many went ahead, and that could be used as a comment in relation to the survey responses. That was just really. So is there an actual need to explicitly state the number of meetings anyway?
Absolutely, we can always provide that contextual information. So when we provide the result, whatever result that is, we would always provide a narration that says, you know, of what we can glean either from the survey results that are provided by Matamata-Piako members or the number of meetings that were held, or that's one way to do
it. I'm not sure where I want to comment on this. I think that just getting the number of meetings isn't going to do it. You know, if they come back 4, then they ain't come back 5. That it would be more helpful to 3 and 2 workshops that pertain to their need. Like, you know, like the wastewater, like anything that will, like the papakainga stuff that's directly involved in it and getting information and setting up a workshop like that. The tendency is to get a wider spread of people too. I have trouble with mana whenua, tangata whenua, and the mana whenua forum, because if I'm sitting outside, well, and I am sitting outside the forum, I don't necessarily see, is my voice still in there as an active person in this council? I mean, as a ratepayer, as a person that lives in the district, and I think that there are some understandings for me that I might have to get right, so I understand what you're thinking about when you put down the issue. And I know that the papakainga just blew up out in our community. Whether the council saw it or not was another thing, but it was trying to understand the policy, understand what that meant. What, you know, if this is a good idea, why is it a good idea? They like the idea. Council loves the idea, but what are we missing? You know, that kind of stuff. So you get more engagement when you go, look, this is what's coming out. The 3 iwi or the marae, you're invited to this, to come and see this and give them good background. And I think you'll get lots of feedback on lots of other things as well. My tendency is to go for a little bit of both options, but I don't think just adding meetings on will help us do that. Now, the other thing is the spread. You know, like with our own survey, you know, there were 4 of us that answered it. And what's the spread? What's the numbers we're talking on? Because it, like you said, Niall, it might not reflect, well, you didn't say this, but it might not reflect the wider opinion of the community. And I'm conscious of that as well. So to be helpful, I think that yes, we should try and get much more involvement, much more participation, but also meaningful involvement. And what does that look like? The report card might come out as, okay, so this is on our agenda. How do you report back and what do we report back? You know, so it's a joint thing. It's not an expectation on me or not an expectation on you, and we miss that communication between us. So it's all I have to say. I'm weary.
I don't think so. I don't think it'll hurt to have both in there from the perspective that it doesn't take much to collect that data because you're collecting it anyway. I guess my question is there, if the Mana Whenua Forum requests a workshop on a particular kaupapa, like papakainga, could something like that be added to the hui? So in terms of an openness to host hui, or will that, is that covered somewhere else? So option 2 is at least 5 formal hui, and if Mana Whenua requests. I don't know quite how to shape that, because I think we want to involve Mana Whenua in topics that are really important to them, and I think papakainga demonstrates that. But I don't think either of those measures captured that, if that makes sense.
So what you're saying is when there is something of particular interest to them, that they have an opportunity to bring that forward in by requesting a meeting rather than waiting for a formal meeting.
Is it captured by like we're talking 6 meetings a year? The only reason we put 5 is because we struggle to get a quorum every now and again. So 6 meetings is every 2 months. Does that give the opportunity to raise additional business? I personally feel it does, but it's how we capture a wider audience than just those that are invited in the room. But that depends on those in the room and how they share it with their audience.
I think, if the Manawhenua Forum expresses a desire to have a workshop on a particular topic, we would facilitate that. And as part of the commentary for that performance measure, we would write and say, this year we have had, X number of formal Manawhenua hui. There was a workshop also held on a district plan issue or a wastewater consenting issue or the public hangar or aspirations or whatever the topic may be of that time. So we can definitely provide that in the comments in our reporting.
Chris, did you have another question? Sorry. No, you're good. So thank you for that. I think that gives you guys a bit to think about in terms of moving that one forward. Can we now look at some of the other measures that are on there? I'll start by the third one in relation to emergency management, where we talk about the assessment score. Is that who scores us? I guess is my question.
So this is an assessment that we have every year. We didn't actually have one in the previous year because we responded to an actual event. So that was the score that was used. And it's undertaken by the Waikato CDEM. So there's a very robust independent process. And the idea of that assessment score is the effectiveness of training. So we undertake training in between our assessments. So it's like that we're building on our capability. And we have made some improvements between our scores. So we're looking at the continual improvement of that to show our readiness.
Is this when Mark Bang came and spoke to us? Okay. Yeah. I couldn't quite remember whether we sat in like a 65 to 70 as an example. And my concern with the measure was that if we stayed in that bucket, so we're still good, but we stay in that bucket, then we're potentially setting ourselves up to fail with the increase. But I'm guessing that you guys have spent a lot of time on that and you're confident that the increase will capture that. Just checking. Okay.
There is another measure where it's a capability score, and we get assessed on that every 2 years. So that's like another. That's like an overall assessment of council's capability, but this measure is on the annual assessment. So I think perhaps there is a bit of confusion around those 2 different things. So that, yeah. But yes, this measure is specifically about the annual assessment. So we're not able to change it. I hope that we could, because I believe it's a little bit confusing possibly for the community. But yeah, it's set by the Waikato group. So yeah. But we can change the target, and we're looking to increase year on year our score.
Thank you. I'm just going to roll through these ones and see if we've got any comments. So the next one is in relation to the events. Any comments on the event? And the next one is in relation to digital strategy. No.
This will just be a guide going forward as to where it lands. There.
Yeah, I found that quite interesting because it felt like more of an internal focus for us to get our stuff ready.
And budget.
Yeah.
And also the budget fits in with that more than anything. It's a because if we don't invest in it, there's no budget to put a minimum of 3 digital.
Yeah, of course, yeah, there's budgeting discussions happening at the same time as this, so it's still
sort of sits with that.
Yeah, it's still dependent on budgets.
Yeah. And my only potential concern with that one is that we shift the focus away from whether they're satisfied with what they've got or what they get as a result of the changes or not. So we're really focused on what we're doing to enable them to access stuff. The next one was on, I'm hoping there's comment on this one. So changing from people will have confidence in their local elected members to our mayor and councillors demonstrate commitment to the democratic process.
Yeah, I think that's quite a good one because, it's quite subjective, how people respond to their comments, and I guess it's whether they understand what the democratic process is the thing people apply.
So to clarify, so currently we measure that through our resident survey.
Yeah.
And you can see the percentage there. The target is currently 55%. This most recent year, 2023, we achieved 49%. So the satisfaction is not high with that. So what we've suggested is that we could shift that one to attendance rate of the mayor and councillors at scheduled council meetings in place of the survey.
Yes, and it's an internal measure, because then if people are attending the meetings, it's you are demonstrating commitment to the democratic process. Absolutely.
Yeah. And because of the trend, you're not seeing an issue in terms of changing the measure from what it was before to something previously, and no concern from Audit New Zealand on that in terms of the comparability.
Well, it wouldn't be comparable because we'd be dropping the survey question and we would be going to a totally new measure. So there'd be nothing to, I mean, what we could do is we can definitely look back at past meeting attendance and look at, pre-vote time on that, because we do have that quite well documented, because we, scheduled council meetings are minuted, so we know who attended. So, yep.
Right. The next one's on, we've covered, I think, quite robustly, which is on whenua. Next is in relation to health and safety, so changing from the old measure of every person goes home safe to a new measure in terms of a system in place.
That reflects well.
Right. Official Information Act, so there's no change to that one. Participation. Anything on our community will have the opportunity to participate in the council consultation process, especially considered we haven't achieved.
Again, I'll just comment that the satisfaction has been quite low. This is one of the lower performing areas in our resident survey, hovering around the 50% mark. And yeah.
Did we consider any type of quantitative in terms of maybe the number of opportunities that people have to participate?
Yep, that is a measure we can look at. I guess the only thing would say that it can vary from year to year, depending on what's what's happening and what's on the go. And sometimes there's consultation that's sort of formalised, and sometimes it might be more sort of targeted or informal.
But I guess that does help give context to people having the opportunity that you've got something to measure from. And okay, yes, it does differ from year to year. It's like with a bylaw that we've gone out for consultation for and things like that. So I guess it is about saying what we've gone out and done, and it's up to the people, isn't it?
I think people don't know.
It's quite subjective, yeah.
And I can't find it, but I did notice in one of them that there was a very high percentage were satisfied in that, and then there was in the same thing there were people who were dissatisfied with it. It was in part of that survey. It was both ways. So
some of our survey questions are targeted to those who've used the service. I wondered if it was like a two-tier question of have you been involved or have you had the opportunity to be involved in a consultation process, and then you could kind of get an idea of like how many people are actually knowing about what's available to comment on, and then you get a follow-up question. Are we satisfied with the process? I don't know if that would be an option. Then we could gauge, like, are we actually reaching people? Because the measure at the moment, we don't really know. It's sort of not that meaningful.
At the end of the day, you reach them when you hit something that they don't want.
But I guess that
they come out of the woodwork then.
Yeah. So I guess the crux of it here, though, is if you're going to have a performance measure, it's what information you want to glean from it to get that meaningful feedback. And generally, if there's something that's topical, it does prick more people to participate than something that's of less interest.
Yeah.
But how can you capture that? So I still think there's a commentary there around that these things were out for consultation. And if they didn't know about it, well then why didn't they, what have we missed that? And that's the information we need to glean as to how we engage with people. And if we're needing to engage with more people, this sort of information needs to help inform us, perhaps.
That's absolutely something we can put in our annual report or commentary in relation to that measure. If that's to decide to continue with that, then what consultations occurred in the year, across the year.
And in my experience, to Bruce's point, sometimes people just don't know what they want, and at least they know what the options are, right? And sometimes that is only triggered because something in their mind bad happened.
Well, I've only been on council for 4 years, and we've been discussing this thing every year for 4 years that I've been on here, and we're always saying, how do we get consultation? How do we get satisfaction consultation? And we haven't come up with an answer yet.
I think the key thing is genuine effort, and so as long as you can demonstrate that you're genuinely trying to make the effort to get the information, might not always land right in terms of what the measure might look like. But that's okay.
I was just going to comment on the hearings process for the kind of plan change, or any plan change actually. Is that a reflection of satisfaction on one way or the other? Because people will support and people will be against. It's like that. To get a couple.
Thank you for all those comments. The next one that has is on the environment, which is also it's an annual update on progress on land use, etc. So guessing there's no comments there, so I'm just going to keep rolling. The next 4 don't have any changes. So animal disturbances, property visits, street patrols, and building consents. Any on those? Yeah, no. Then we have a new one, which we were talking about before. So it's the code of compliance one. Any comments on that? Okay.
Yeah.
Needs measuring.
Yeah. Then we have complaints, unauthorised activity. My understanding is all the rest and no change.
Yeah, just sorry, Madam Chair, wanting to just reduce that percentage from 100%, which does not allow for any kind of flexibility at all. So if we don't respond to one, there is our measure out there. So yeah, reducing that to 95% within 10 working days.
It's realistic, more realistic than 100%.
And it's not a legislative driven legislative. It's not driven by legislation.
So unless there are any further comments, I'm going to go back to the recommendation, which is that the report be received, and we've got the final part, which is the ratings.
Yeah.
Let's talk ratings.
We love talking ratings.
Yeah. So in summary, shifting the rating scale from what we have currently to something different.
Yes. So yes, you would have seen we currently measure some of our measures through a community survey, through some internal discussions with elected members. the preference has been to update the scale. The current scale is on your screen there. You can see there's quite a large, it's actually not that easy to see, but there's a large percentage, of neither nor responses. So councillors are looking at whether or not we can simplify that. And so we've spoken to our survey provider, and we can look to change the scale, and basically just to remove that option. We've identified some risks in your report. We'll lose some comparable data. It will mean, obviously, removal of that options means people are kind of forced to choose one way or another. Our survey provider are recommending to keep the don't know option because it's a legitimate answer. And if we don't have the don't know, then people can, again, they'll be forced to choose an option, or they can skip the question. So we won't have that data. So there are some risks around it. Very interested in the korero today to advise council on thoughts.
Capo team, this is important. Not to say that anything else isn't, but let's go.
Well, I think it was pretty clear from the council discussion that we saw no point in it. And I think we might have an issue where we've got nothing to compare it against, or there'll be a change in comparison. But you have to make a decision to change it and do it. And that was what council wanted.
And to add to that, it's just a source of frustration when there's a big percentage of neither nor, a massive percentage of neither nor. So, if they're somewhat dissatisfied or somewhat satisfied, neither nor.
You just might find that don't know.
Well, the don't know might grow, but that's fine, because if they don't know, then they don't have an opinion.
And it doesn't get counted. It's a skip.
So our survey provider actually recommending a 4-point scale, keeping it quite simple. So if we have the somewhat satisfied, somewhat dissatisfied, it's quite tricky to go through that on the phone. And it would add time and cost and complexity. So this is much cleaner scale with the don't know option.
That's
perfect. Don't know, so people just respond. Look, I'm actually not sure. I don't know. I haven't used that facility, or I'm not familiar enough to answer it accurately. They just, okay, no, they didn't know. They couldn't provide a response. We notice that's quite a small currently. You don't know. It's the neither nor, a large chunk.
It doesn't get counted as a satisfied or dissatisfied.
Joanne, did you have any comments on this, particularly because council has discussed this to my understanding previously?
Yeah, I think that the neither nor is
the
neither nor is either if they fall back into that if they don't know, or otherwise there is a disconnect. Like is it even relevant for me? So I don't have an opinion, but I'm not sure that it's relevant to me anyway. And depending on the numbers that are answering the survey and stuff, either you leave that section out, you leave the neither nor out, and I'm not sure how that skews the answers or anything, but in that neither nor, was there any comments anywhere that came?
No, we don't report on why. We only report on the dissatisfied comments in the survey. Yeah, we don't ask.
Yeah, because when I was going through and I was looking at it, I'm thinking, gosh, it's a lot.
It's a big.
There's a big chunk of the people. So how would we look to improve it? And I'm thinking, oh, I'll leave it out altogether, or, you know, like, I'm not sure that you can do that, but I get more from looking at dissatisfied. And you think, okay, so I've got something to work on. You know, like I got something to work on or work towards, or is it because I didn't give enough information or whatever? But the other thing is either there is a disconnect because it doesn't belong to me. And even more. I don't understand.
I thank you. My focus will be on the loss of comparable data and the concerns raised by both the surveyor and Audit New Zealand. So are we at risk of any type of qualification as a result of not having comparable data from Audit New Zealand, as an example?
That would obviously be a question to them, but I don't believe so. I would say that we would definitely need to make a disclosure that the rating scale has changed. And when we look at historic data and those trends over time, which is effectively one of the benefits of the survey, where we keep the questions consistent, we can track that over time. We would have to make that disclosure that the rating scale has changed. I would also note that we have changed the rating scale previously. This is not the first time. Over the years, we've kind of tweaked this. But yes, Audit New Zealand's comment is quite right, and particularly in terms of the new audit standard, which has a focus on comparability, we will need to make sure that's, you know, that disclosure is upfront and transparent. Whether that results in a qualification, I don't think so. I wouldn't imagine so.
The key word that you mentioned is the disclosure. So why we have done it. So it seems like there is appetite to reset, and so that's a good thing. And I don't want something like that to get in the way of us having that mindset. So just so I'm clear, we're moving to very satisfied, satisfied, dissatisfied, very dissatisfied, and don't know.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. And that will, to your point, by Joanne, potentially unpack that 29% or whatever it was of the norm.
Yeah. I guess the thing is I don't know, or I don't have an opinion. That's the thing that it is. If you don't have an opinion or you don't know, sort of gets put together, because that's where the neither nor is. I don't have an opinion on it, basically. So that's where, if you don't have an opinion, sort of has to slot into the don't know.
We potentially say that currently the neither nor is almost the fence sitters rather than the don't know. So I think don't know is that they don't know. They don't have enough information to answer, but then there's quite a substantial which are neither, you know, just in the middle, fence sitting.
Because my concern is having the don't know. I wanted to know how many of the neither nors will go into the don't know, and that's a risk to an actual decision.
That we'll find out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it is a risk as to how it might go. Our survey provider thinking it might go in the dissatisfied direction. That's kind of their opinion with previous
into the dissatisfied.
Satisfied. Yeah.
Well,
people are sort of forced to do one or the other.
I'm happy.
Yeah. So it's definitely a risk. Just see how that plays out if we decide. Depends on if we decide to go with it.
So the feeling is that those neither nors will probably move to the satisfied, and that would shift that way. But there might be some that go into the don't know. We just don't know where that might land.
It's what we do with the don't know data that is the most important thing. If we include it in dissatisfied, then it's still going to create the same problem we have with neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. So it's what we do with that data that will give us the information we want. A lot of people will push between satisfied and dissatisfied anyway because they feel as though they've been pushed into making a decision. And yes, no, I hope they go into the satisfied box, but if we just have to make the don't know a skip and don't put them in satisfied or dissatisfied. Otherwise we're distorting the data all over again, and that's what we're trying to avoid.
Excellent comment. Completely agree. Thank you, Councillor Kevin. So the recommendation in front of us is to receive the report, that we provide feedback on the performance management framework, which we have done, and the Risk and Assurance Committee provides feedback in terms of the rating scale, which was, to my understanding, to shift to the very dissatisfied, satisfied, dissatisfied, very dissatisfied, and don't know.
Please let me move that.
We have a mover. Do we have a second? Don't know.
For you neither.
Councillor Bruce, seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, cool. A great discussion, team. Thank you very much. Kia ora. Kia ora. And now we are on item 7.8 of the agenda, which is our schedule of meetings for 2024, which should be a compliment. Should be. Steph, did you want to make any comments on that? I think it's pretty much in front of us that risk and assurance committees occur on the Tuesday on the across the year. Yeah.
Yeah, the only feedback was from our Matamata-Piako forum. I asked whether they prefer to avoid school holidays because members have children or have maternal that turn up for school holidays. So that was my one request, was to try and avoid school holidays, which has been updated. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I guess my one was just whether there was sufficient turnaround between some of the risk and assurance committee meetings and the council meetings for our governance team to do what they need to do for minutes and things like that. But I'm guessing because you put the report up that you're okay with that. Okay. So it looks like for next year, 5th of March, 18th of June, 10th of September, 29th of October and 10th of December. The recommendation, if there are no further comments, is to receive the report, confirm the meetings for 2024. I'm happy to move. Yeah. We've got Councillor Bruce Stapleton. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, come on, carry. Hilda. The next item on the agenda is 8.1, which is a review of the delegation policy and delegation register. Welcome back, Ellie. So taking this read that brief summary of the main points for our consideration. Thank you.
Brilliant, no problem. So this is a requirement for us to, when technically council has all the powers and then they delegate to the chief executive certain things, as you see in the policy, things they can't delegate, and then the things they can, John then has the power to delegate those further between staff. Some of the biggest changes, this is pretty standard for us, we do it every year, we do an update and we do it along the way it's required, but some of the main changes were the Wahano aerodrome delegations. Financial delegations are held by finance now rather than in here to save the double up, and just legislation updates that have been made and replacements reflect staff changes or staff name changes in their roles. So we do it by role rather than staff member. It's a little bit more consistent. Yeah. It's pretty same at the moment. There hasn't been too many updates.
Any questions, Steve?
I think we had a big tidy up last year.
Yeah, it's on my short to medium term project to get everyone updated, and absolutely their warrants corrected or changed, amended and updated as much as I can.
I'm going to ask a couple of things. So when this policy goes, I think I've asked it now before, but I'll ask again, when it goes to council, is council receiving or approving?
They are adopting the changes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So effectively they're approving this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know what page number that you get, but on page number 263, and I'm guessing it's of the attachments. I'd like us to make sure that when it mentions the Risk and Assurance Committee, it aligns with our charter. So as an example, when it talks about the Te Mana Whenua Forum and it states, we could state something like agreed in our charter to provide a little bit of flexibility if our charter changes, because at the moment it's really specific. But if our charter changes, then this will need to change.
We do tend to, we align this with every time there's a new council, which is why it's around this time of the year, because when we do get a new council and they make changes to every charter, those changes do get made at that time. Yeah. And then but thank you, and I'll have a look at
providing that update.
Just to give that flexibility in case
Yeah.
anything in our charge.
It happens within the term.
Right. Any feedback from Audit New Zealand in relation to this at all? Have they provided any feedback on the policy?
Is that sorry?
Any feedback from our external auditors, Audit New Zealand?
No, this year they focused specifically on highly on building, and they all got updated. Yeah, so that's what they focused on, and I haven't heard anything else since. Yeah,
So just a question, and it is around timing, obviously, because the District Licensing Committee. So this was set at the end of last year. Yes. So when will it get updated?
If something, usually it would be next year, this time next year, but with things like the District Licensing Committee, that would be sent to council a little bit earlier.
Yeah, because this needs updating.
Okay. Because this hadn't gone to council yet.
No.
Yeah, so what part is that?
Well, so Neil, past councillor Neil Goodger will not be a member.
At what time? Because I understood he still was now.
Is he still now? And Dennis Taylor passed away a few months ago.
Okay.
And we appointed a new member. There has been an appointment of a new member to the District Licensing Committee.
Yeah, I think that, what's
It's coming.
Yeah, it's tomorrow.
Oh God, yes. I've gone so far through my reports that I've missed that. So yeah,
Perfect. Yeah, so
perfect. That's good. That's good. That's reassures me because yeah, obviously reading through tomorrow's I haven't right. Thank you. That's all I get.
And maybe this is for you, Don. Were there any instances where our delegation policy didn't work for us and then we needed to refer to council because we'd gone outside the scope of it? I'm just looking to see if there's any feedback that would shape the policy. No. Whenever it's a high threshold outside someone's delegation, that will always come to council. And then if they're within the LTP, they usually, yeah. And on page 312, it talks about civil defence and what happens if there's a state of emergency, I guess, declared or not declared.
Yes.
And I couldn't see the differentiation between the 250,000 for declared and not declared. They look the same.
Okay.
And I actually thought that they would be different, or maybe not. And then it also talks about uncapped funds. So effectively, open book, yes, and checkbook. This is definitely Dennis's area of expertise, but as I understand it, it is a little bit open book because if it was, let's say, the Christchurch earthquake, the extent of it and how long something might go for, and then money they might need for helping residents, food, things like that, generators, you just can't cap it because you never know how big an event could be. Yeah. And the only issue I had with that was, and potentially Lania's area, is the cash flow issue that might result from that. Yeah, like having enough money in the bank to actually pay for all of that. And I'm unsure how it works between when a decision made with civil defence and council interacting with their ability to pay and how that relationship works. I'm not too aware. So for committee members, the reason why I'm pointing this out is that, you know, big things could happen, and we get that there needs to be an ability to go and do what we need to do. But my concern is that at no point, other than saying we have to document for every $250,000 that's spent, there doesn't seem to be a need to come back into either the CEO or council to just check, hey, am I okay? Do we have enough money in the bank account? All of those different types of things. So that would be my only concern in that space. Any other questions, Kate?
Yeah, just to clarify the DLC, because the payment tomorrow is slightly different. So just
Okay.
check the updates on
Perfect. Thank you. The recommendation in front of us will be to receive the report and provide feedback, which we have done. I'm happy to move. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
By Joanne seconding. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, 4-1 carried. Hilda, thank you. Thank you very much. We are on item 8.2, the LTP 2434 update.
I'm guessing we have 9 approved. And the recommendation in front of us is to receive the report and provide feedback. But
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this report just provides an update on progress towards the long-term plan. I would just point out the key matter that the key stage that we are at the moment is budgeting. So the council had a workshop on Wednesday to look at the draft budgets for the LTP, and that is very much a focus at the moment. Once we get through the next couple of workshops, we will be pulling together the LTP documentation and the draft LTP consultation document with a view to bringing those to council at the December meeting. As you can see from the report, we have now agreed the audit dates with Audit New Zealand. And the key date there is the audit will commence on the 29th of January, 2024, so just after the summer break. And the schedule is that council will adopt the consultation document and all of the supporting information at its March meeting. And then we'll start the consultation period after that. And as you can see, I'll just provide an update on all of the work streams that we have for the LTP. One area that I would welcome feedback from the committee on is around a quality review of the LTP. So we've had a number of approaches to this in the past. We have used an external reviewer to look at the consistency across the LTP and making sure that everything's compliant and that all our assumptions have been applied correctly throughout the document and so on. At one stage we've had a legal review of the entire LTP, but that was very much from a legal compliance perspective. So yeah, I'm very keen for feedback from the committee as to whether the matters that are identified in the agenda would cover a sufficient quality review in your view, and yeah, how we might approach that work. We have talked to a couple of potential providers as to whether they could do that, and there is availability. And it would just be a matter of timing as to when that's best done, given that the audit commences on the 29th of January, and that council would be signing off on the plan at the December meeting. So just kind of how we, how we work that in. From an Audit New Zealand perspective, they've certainly indicated to us that the need to see quality review documents. That was sort of emphasised to us through this most recent annual report. That having whether that's an internal quality review process or somebody external casting their eye over it, is necessary. So yeah, I'll leave it there. I'm sure happy to take any questions.
So who would you be suggesting? Who might you suggest to do that quality review?
Well, one approach we could look to do it internally. There would be a question as to who might do that internally, especially when you've been involved in the detail of it. It can sometimes be a little hard to see where there might be gaps. But we would, there's a few people around to it.
I don't normally see gaps. I normally see things overfilled, actually, to be quite honest. But so if it wasn't internally, who would you consider?
There's a few consultants that could do this kind of work that are experienced in LTP work. So yeah, we could lean on one of those. In the past, we have used in the last 2021 LTP, we used a local government consultant that actually worked for Thames Coromandel District Council for a number of years. So she gave a review of the plan and prepared a bit of a report. And from that, there was a number of changes that needed to be made to the LTP to tidy things up. So yeah.
Bureaucracy.
Any other questions, team? So I guess we'll cover the first one first. So Niall is asking us to provide comment in relation to whether MPDC should source an external resource to do a independent quality review. So That's the question in front of us.
I think there's some real advantage of having somebody oversee something that, you know, like you've been involved with, and sometimes it's the little things that you might miss. I'm not saying that your staff haven't done a good job, it's just sometimes you read it so many times you just don't see it anymore.
See budget for
Yep, we in our as part of our LTP budget, we did provide for this as a process. So yep, we do have that. But I think obviously the LTP is quite a significant document, and there are a lot of things, a lot of different authors been contributing to it. So yeah, happy to take your guidance on how we might step that forward.
So you've got a budget, so what is that budgetary figure?
For this piece of work, I think we'd be looking at probably some 5,000.
So it's budgeted spend, and we expect that getting an external resource to do this would come within that budget.
Yes, and based on what we've paid in the past, we haven't gone out and really got pricing firmed up, but because I wanted to seek guidance from this committee before we go any too far with this. The question I would have is, would the committee like that person to provide feedback to you directly and speak to this committee in terms of their findings or some kind of report back? Or do you think that's more of an internal exercise?
Yeah, definitely a report back, and if it was at all possible, through the chair, like might be interesting to have a talk to the person.
Sure.
I quite like it in the sense that there's a bit of a belt and braces approach here, just having another lens on the process. And it's not a significant cost. So yeah, I guess in some ways it'd give us assurance if they reported to us as well. So yeah.
So just to clarify, the points that I've listed in the agenda, where it says this review would specifically, they're just some suggestions and what was previously done. And again, I'm happy to take your guidance on whether that covers everything or whether there's some things that may not be necessary to make sure that the scope is appropriate.
So my consideration is that if you can list specifically the things that you'd want them to have a look at, it tells me that you have got a pretty clear indication of everything that should be in there. And as long as it's there, I wouldn't be worrying about it.
Yeah,
I agree with Councillor Dewhurst. I think having a review of something that takes our team so flipping long to do, unless they were 100% up to date of what we're actually doing, I'm not sure why we would want them to review it. We have so many workshops on this that we are at least familiar with it and understand the complexities. I don't see how anyone could review that for less than $5,000. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Thank you for the comments, Niall. Question from me. Do you think that there will be significant value add by having an external resource reviewing? Or is it just have there been any deal breakers that have been raised by previous reviews?
Almost 3 years ago, we did find it useful. We did find it valuable, and they did pick out some useful things that we were able to change. I think it is always just about the timing of it, because if you do the review too early, you don't have everything ready. But if it's so late, then are we able to make those changes in time for audit? And as I said, there's a directive from the audit team that we need to make sure that the information we pass to them has gone through a quality assurance process, whatever that looks like, and it's really up to council to determine what that quality assurance process is, because they see their audit role as not providing that. It's they're looking at specific things that are in their scope.
I have confidence in the council staff preparing the long-term plan. I've got full confidence. I don't see the need for it.
I think the word that I heard, no, was useful. And so, the critical word being useful. So my understanding is, no matter what, we have to do the quality assurance process to give that to Audit New Zealand when they do the audit, and that can be internal or external. And so I guess if we're not doing the external, do we have sufficient capacity internally to do it?
But we haven't really explored this in depth. We'll probably need to just have a discussion internally about who might be best placed to do that, and the time commitment on their part, and when we kind of fit this in.
Because my sense is you're going to be paying the $5,000 potentially internally versus externally. But I'm also thinking, well, that's $5,000 that can go towards Manaya's $120,000 more from insurance.
Yeah, and I guess it's looking around the risks going ahead because of capacity with staff and getting this work done. And what if one staff member was sick for a while? Then what? And if we had an external doing it, then it might, I don't know, like this is just the belt and braces. It's not a significant cost. But you know, there's always, when you do the long-term plan, there's always the risk of somebody leaving or someone being sick or whatever. And in the perfect storm, if we were to try and do it internally and somebody was away, then does that challenge our process of getting our long-term plan completed as well? I'm just trying to get that in my head somewhere.
I know that when we did this exercise previously, we used an external person in 2021 to do this review, and they provided a report back with some recommendations and improvements to the document. And some of those were quite minor in nature, and some of them, needed a bit more work. And Audit New Zealand asked for that. They wanted to see that report back on, and if that was to be done this time, then they would no doubt ask for that again.
Yeah, I suspect, Madam Chair, this is an auditor's view of giving them more confidence that the document's been, if you like, peer reviewed at a relatively high degree, and that they're assured that our processes give them confidence that they're looking at something that meets the standard that they're looking for. Because I suppose it's a bit like, what's an analogy? Analogy is a site inspection by a building officer. They're not a clerk of works, but they give some assurance to the owner, if you like, that there has been at least some review of critical matters, even though the consent's been through the whole gambit as a tabletop level.
And so I guess what we need is, and I know now that you said you need to go away and see whether you have the resource, but that's probably the information that we don't have now, because it has to be.
Without, I don't want to put people on the spot internally, but I think that could be a struggle, resource-wise, to do that. Just with the pressures that people are facing, but we can certainly have that discussion and see. I think it would just be a case of, would that review best be done by somebody who has quite a deep knowledge of the plan, or more of somebody who hasn't been directly involved? So it's just finding that right person, internally, if we were going to go down that road.
I think it's a relatively small investment for something that you take off the hands of staff that are already pressured to do all the other stuff.
So the risk is that audit aren't happy that we haven't had somebody peer review the report. Now, what is that risk That's. I
mean,
look, I won't
I
argue.
know what you're saying. Auditors love this sort of thing. That's what I'm saying.
It's just mind-boggling.
This is not the only quality assurance piece that we have. We have other checklists and things built in, but yeah.
I mean, I have asked staff as to what aspects would be more critical to have peer review than others. I didn't have feedback on that. I think perhaps if we, just as a way forward here, Madam Chair, if we give us a little bit of time to have a bit more of a discussion on it. To some extent, I'd argue it's an operational decision. It's of interest to the Risk and Assurance Committee, of course. But ultimately, you look to us to consider a process like this as to its merits or otherwise.
So our recommendation could be that we consider that we
I think our feedback is that I think the recommendation is that we give feedback, and we've given that, but we're not the ultimate decision makers. To Don's point, in my mind, this is an operational decision. So let's kick that back into that space. So feedback given, that goes back to the team to decide how they're going to make that happen. There's budget available, and they'll be mindful of the resourcing, the pressure that it will put in terms of the current resource that we have. So in my mind,
we also just want to be mindful of, any spend, it's still a cost. So we want to make sure that if we are going to do this, that it's so valuable and So, and I take the point, if we did embark on the exercise, there was a design with some kind of feedback to this committee, and I'm just thinking about what kind of the timing might be. So would that be, for example, at your February meeting? By that time, we've probably got through the audit.
Just a report, I guess, in terms of how it went by Joey and raised in person. I think we probably, with the amount of money, won't have the luxury for that. But just a report coming back, just to close that loop. Yeah. And then back to the committee again, that was one part of the report, but the rest being providing feedback in terms of where we're at. And so in the report, page 122, you can see, or thereabouts, you can see that there are 3 items that are highlighted yellow and 2 that are highlighted red. So I guess back to you, Niall, in terms of the risk that poses to this process, about the status of those ones. Maybe you can make a brief comment on those particular ones. The yellow.
So in relation to the infrastructure and financial, that work had been effectively paused just pending getting through the budget discussions. So now that we have had an initial workshop with council, there'll be another workshop the week after next. We will be able to finish off and complete those financial and infrastructure strategy pieces. So while it is noted as an area still under development, it has slipped a bit. That was a deliberate decision just while we got through the budgeting to allow that to occur. So I'm still confident that we can achieve what is needed by the end of November. And the other one was in relation to Māori participation in decision making. I think was the last one on page 122. And there is going to be a hui with Mana Whenua Forum in March, February or March, I think it is. But what we will do is we have to include a discussion in the long-term plan about how Māori are to be involved in decision making. So what we're looking to do is to bring that section to the next Mana Whenua Hui in December to get them to confirm that they're comfortable with that. So that was just, we'll just extend to the next meeting of the Mana Whenua Forum. So that's why that one was marked in orange or yellow.
As document development was the other one, that was orange. Yeah, so more orange than yellow.
Yeah, again, we haven't, there's been pieces of work that's been continuing, but in terms of pulling everything together into one long-term plan document, that's underway at the moment. The consultation document, we still need to get some direction from elected members around what the topics are for consultation, and yeah, what that looks like, so we can actually shape up that document. And yeah, council will need to sign that off at the December meeting as well, so that the audit team can actually audit that. Yeah.
And then the quality checks we've talked about,
Yes.
in relation to the resource, and then the last one being the CCO, which is in red at the moment.
Yes, that's correct. Sorry, I don't have any update on that one. That usually just comes from the likes of Waikato Regional Airport Limited and the documentation that they provide, and then we have to include certain information in our long-term plan. Yeah, I'll follow that one up as an action from this meeting. The status of that.
And on page 121, it starts to talk about the involvement of the risk and assurance in this space. So what is the expectation of this committee moving forward in relation to this process?
Sorry, which page was that?
121, I think. It's the timeframes now in terms of the dates. So where does the risk and assurance committee come in terms of the latter end, if at all?
5th March 2024. And not 2023.
Yeah,
going back in time.
Yeah, and is there any role for the risk and assurance committee for the 18th of June, Hui?
So if you look at the audit dates under the audit heading, we've got the first interim audit visit on the 11th of December this year. Then, as I said, the formal audit would commence on the 29th of January. We've programmed a risk and assurance committee meeting on the 5th of March, and that would be prior to the issue of the audit opinion on the consultation document, and full council would adopt that consultation document. And then it's not actually programmed in here, but I would envisage there would be another risk and assurance meeting in June, where you would consider the final LTP before it's adopted.
Yes, I think it's on the 18th. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So maybe if that could be input, that would be great.
Absolutely.
And then cover that off.
Yes.
23.
And 20 and 5th of March 2024 is just a typo there for the audit and risk meeting.
Yeah. And risk and assurance too. No, I'll pick that up.
Yeah, risk and assurance, renaming it. Yeah.
Yep. So that actually has come from the audit plan. So they haven't actually checked, but I agree that is incorrect. And then you'll note that the final management or the draft management report in August of next year. So yeah, that will also come back to this committee after the LTP process.
Okay. Thanks, team. So the recommendation in front of us is to receive the report and provide feedback. I'm happy to move. Can I have a seconder, please? Yeah, Adrian, seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, common, carry. Thanks, Mo.
Thank you.
We're on 8.3, which is review of progress with external and internal audit recommendations. Ladia? Yeah, kia ora, Ladia.
It's not too much to report here, given that we haven't had any new reports since then. But as I've noted in there, anything that's progressed further is noted in blue. So I'm hoping by the time we get the next management report, a few of these will be green. That will be a nice progress. I don't, unless you've got any questions on anything about the year.
Yep, I've got some questions. Anyone else? I'll start. So I just want a confirmation of the process in terms of coming into this space. So if we think about the audit report that we're going to receive from Audit New Zealand, so the report will be issued once management comments have been agreed, etc.
Yeah.
Then the recommendations from that report will be included in this report. And then we've got two options in terms of when the work is done to resolve that recommendation. So resolve to me means we internally have resolved it. We're trying to get clarification between resolved and closed? Because my understanding is Audit New Zealand would need to come in and do a review of what we've done to confirm that they are happy or satisfied that that work has been done and that recommendation can be closed. So will the recommendation leave this report when it's resolved or closed?
Yeah, so when we get Audit New Zealand's management report, they put them in tables of previous recommendations that are now closed and new recommendations. So or ones that are not closed. So that's how we'll reflect them in here.
Yeah, but thank you, because it said in here matters previously noted as received as a result have been dropped off or will be dropped off. So that's the only reason why I raised that point. Okay. Thank you. Cool. And then so my preference, if it's possible, would be to have a table that overarches the front so we can see all of the urgent recommendations, the necessary recommendations and the beneficial ones, which ones are open, which ones are resolved and which ones are closed. That kind of, so it gives us one snapshot so that we can easily see if there has been any progress as well since last time.
Okay, and then the detail.
Yeah, and then the detail that sits in behind. Yeah. And I think it would be a really nice snapshot if that's possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any other comments? Okay. So the recommendation in front of us is to receive the report. I'm happy to move. Do we have a seconder? Yep. By Joanna seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Okay, it's come on a carry. Kia ora. Speeding for it now. So we are at item 8.4 on the agenda. Thank you, Nadia. 8.4 on the agenda, which is the Risk and Assurance Work Programme 2023. So, Steph has put this up, but I'm quite keen to see if there are any comments on this. I'm not sure who I asked these to. I'm going to ask them nonetheless. So as an example, we've got scheduled reports and we've got standing reports. And so with the type buildings were scheduled to come, but there's no update. And I'm not.
So there's nothing to report on it. There's nothing. We've had no updates in the last report.
So I guess my question is, does it need to be? Is it coming too often or not enough? Do we need to change our work program as a result of that?
Yes, so I just put it in because Ellie wasn't here.
Okay.
So I wasn't sure we had to follow up, but she said there's no update. There's nothing to follow.
Yeah. And then so policies as well. I do think so. What I might raise for the committee is that I've asked whether Don can actually provide us a standing item of giving us an update or a lay of the land, especially for Joanne and I that might not have the wider context of what's happening in council. So today would be a perfect example where Don could have given us an update in terms of the central government or general election and what that means for Matamata-Piako District Council. So moving forward, Don and I had a quick chat about having that as a standing item on the agenda, and if Don's not here, then one of his team can provide that, just to give us context. Yes.
Because,
and if we're focusing on risk.
Because we do discuss this sort of thing through our normal. So you
needs to be in here as well.
Yeah, just to have it'll only be a couple of minutes, but it just really sets the scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it was like the question I asked Gary, what kinds of things are we know leading up to this point that there were some things going to be put on hold until the first 100 days and the government elect gets in and all that sort of stuff. But what impact does it have on some of the reports that are coming up and some of the stuff, and the delay and all that kinds of things. So, and any other information that might be relevant for us to help make better decisions.
So the recommendation in front of us is to receive the report. So I'm happy to move to a second, please. That's what Gary is seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, comment carried. Anything else, Governance team? We don't. Oh, well, play it, guys. Well done. Okay. Sorry. Can you just wait for that? So my apologies. I don't know whether we all met. Cool. Yes. So I don't know if we all met, but welcome. So my understanding is Cooljet will be doing our governance space for the Risk and Assurance Committee moving forward. So thank you. Thank you. And Steph will still be here. But just wanted to say thank you and welcome to our committee, and apologies for not saying that at the very start of the meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. So there was one more thing that I might raise is I see Leslie in the room. Leslie, would you mind giving us a quick update in terms of the email you sent to me last week about risk and what that looks like moving forward? So committee members, you might remember that last time Leslie and I had agreed to have a corridor around finding a way to present some of the risks from Matamata-Piako District Council into this Risk and Assurance Committee space, given that it's going to take us a while to have a formal system of reporting risk so we can give assurance to council. So just a 1 minute update in terms of what you told me, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
So I think I've mentioned before, the situation is that we're doing risk assessments using spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets, and there's a large number of those spreadsheets now in play. This makes reporting harder because you have to extract the information out of the spreadsheet. The actions that have been taken are that the owners of the spreadsheet to provide a quarterly report on the risk, and that will be presented to the Audit and Risk Committee. The other action that's been taken is I've gone through a selection process for software, and at the stage of doing some testing or piloting of that software to say this is the one that we want to use going forward, which will make reporting like a press button more robust.
Good one. Thanks for that. You got no opportunity to ask questions because she wasn't on the agenda, so thank you very much for your flexibility of coming up and giving that information. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing more at the next Risk and Assurance meeting.
I suppose the only risk of these budget cuts is how that will affect purchase of the software.
Yes, and time will tell in relation to that. So thank you. Yeah. Well done. Thanks so much, Gary, if you wouldn't mind closing out Hui with Karaki. And just want to say thanks to all the staff and also to the elected members and independents as well in terms of them going through quite a hefty package this time around. So well done on staying awake. Kia ora. Next, please.